Warrior Lore. Chapter 28. Du Xiaofu continued to lead the group through the celestial demon battlefield in search of treasures. In order to avoid any more accidents, he did not let everyone split up. The deeper they went, the more he felt a strong sense of dread. In the air, the all-pervasive murderous aura drilled into their hearts and became more and more terrifying. This battlefield is incomparably huge. I'm afraid it's not much smaller than the Changrong sky. Yu Chengyan's eyes flashed as he looked around and said, what he sensed shocked everyone. This battlefield was actually as big as the Changrong sky. This was too terrifying. Every world in the 33 heavens was vast and boundless. Even if an immortal realm cultivator flew through the air and circled around, it would take several years. Only those who had reached the meditative realm would be able to ignore such a distance. And in this celestial demon battlefield, everyone could not even feel the edges after entering for so long. Moreover, from the strong murderous aura, they could sense that there were countless souls buried here. The deeper they went, the more terrifying the aura was, and it was still gradually increasing. If this isn't a land of death, could it be a great world? Or could it be that this battlefield was originally formed by a great world? Du Xiaofu had such a guess in his heart. He could not help but think this way. Such a vast land. And it was also the battlefield of many living beings and demons when the heavens and earth were first created. It was very likely that it was originally a great world. However, under the erosion of the surging river of blood, it gradually became filled with murderous aura and could no longer give birth to new life. The entrance to the celestial demon battlefield is in the Changrong sky, but I keep feeling that it's in another space and has no real connection with the Changrong sky. Yu Chengyao stretched out two slender fingers and gently brushed the hair in front of her forehead as she spoke with her red lips slightly opened. Before everyone entered the celestial demon battle realm, the gigantic spatial crack that stretched across the entire sky seemed to lead to another world. It was obvious that it did not exist in the supreme Changrong heaven. That terrifying crack was most likely a gigantic opening created by the demon god when he escaped all those years ago. It merely led to the supreme Changrong heaven. The fiend celestial escaped, and he is a manifestation of a portion of the fiend celestial's power. Will there be more of the fiend celestial's power in the fiend celestial battlefield? Du Xiaofu spoke one by one. He lowered his gaze and fell into deep thought. This was not impossible. Although he did not know how the demon alpha had been suppressed back then, after so many years, he was still able to use a part of his primordial spirit to transform into a demon god. This showed how powerful he was. If there were still remnants of the demon alpha's power, it would be very dangerous for everyone. This place was different from the divine battle realm. No matter who went to that realm, they would be suppressed. If they encountered someone as powerful as the demon alpha here, Du Xiaofu knew that with his current strength, he would not be able to fight them. Even if he fought with his life on the line, he would not be able to burn the fiend celestial to death like he did back then. However, after thinking about it, this doubt dissipated. After all, the fiend celestial battlefield had been closely examined by many meditative forgetfulness experts of the supreme Changrong heaven. It would only open after tens of millions of years for the younger generation to enter and train. They would not do anything they were not confident in. The powerful demons must have been mostly wiped out, so they would not be too dangerous. Otherwise, there would be no point in training. Chengyan, can you tell me in detail about the demon race? Suddenly, Du Xiaofu turned his head and looked at Yu Chengyan and the others. After coming to the 33 heavens, he had been busy cultivating and dealing with some trivial matters. Everything about the demons only existed in a few words, and did not have a systematic understanding. Now that he had come to the fiend celestial battlefield, he suddenly wanted to know more, so he could only ask Yu Chengyan and the others. These young disciples had been living in the 33 heavens all this time, so they naturally knew a lot about the legends of the demons. Hearing Du Xiaofu's question, Yu Chengyan pursed his lips and nodded. Martial Uncle Du has only been in the 33 heavens for 100 years, so it is normal that you do not know about these things. Then, he continued, legend has it that this world was originally a piece of chaos, and 3,000 fiend celestials were born from it. The demon alpha was one of them. As creatures of the chaos, The 3,000 fiend celestials were incomparably powerful. If even one of them survived, they could suppress the entire 33 heavens with their strength alone. Their cultivation was definitely at the legendary Tao carrier realm, or even stronger. In the chaos, the 3,000 fiend celestials launched a fierce expedition. Many of them fell, and the world was shrouded in darkness. Those that lasted until the end were the absolute powerhouses of the 3,000 fiend celestials. Among them was the great god Pangu, who opened up the 33 heavens, and the demon Alpha. As for whether there were others, there are no historical records. Later, Pangu used the power of chaos to open up the world, causing the chaos to split apart, producing yin and yang energies. The 33 heavens and countless small worlds were born from this. In these small worlds, countless living beings emerged. Today, the trillions of living beings in the 33 heavens and countless small worlds all originated from this. The chaos gave birth to 3,000 fiend celestials, and the great god Pangu opened up the chaos and refined the world. Just what kind of strength was that? Listening to Yu Chengyin's words, Du Xiaofu felt a wave of dizziness wash over him as he marveled at the terrifying chaos era. He could imagine that the 3,000 fiend celestials were just an imaginary number, not a real number. 3,000 represented many things. It was not necessarily 3,000, but it was definitely more than 3,000. As for those infinitely powerful fiend celestials, each one of them was incredibly strong. Using the word terrifying wasn't enough to describe them. Among them, the most terrifying were Pangu and the demon Alpha. Perhaps there were other fiend celestials as well. After the chaos shattered, the war between Pangu and the demon Alpha continued. The demon Alpha led countless demons to invade the 33 heavens, and countless living beings suffered a calamity of annihilation. The fiend celestials slaughtered without end, causing the entire 33 heavens to fall into a dark period of time. They nearly fell, turning everything into a demonic realm. As Du Xiaofu sighed, Tang Yuanshan from the Temple of Divine Arts stepped forward. He continued Yu Chengyin's words and said, under such a background, the 33 heavens began a fierce war against the fiend celestials, launching a bloody expedition against them. At that time, nearly every race and every living being was drawn into this calamity. If they didn't resist with all their strength, then the only fate awaiting them was death. There is no doubt about the fiend celestial strength. However, at that time, when the heavens and earth were first opened, the life forms of the 33 heavens were born in the age of yin and yang. They were also extremely terrifying. After Tang Yuanshan finished speaking, he turned to Du Xiaofu and said, the Divine Emperor should have heard of the 9 great realms of the 33 heavens. The final 2 great realms, Tao-bearing and formless, are only legends. In the present era, such powerhouses shouldn't exist. However, from the records of the ancient books, I speculate that such terrifying characters definitely existed among the powerhouses of that time. This is because these 9 great realms were passed down from ancient times and are still in use today. Yes, this is the consensus of many powerhouses of the 33 heavens. At this time, Yu Chengyao gracefully walked to Du Xiaofu's side and continued. All the powerhouses of the 33 heavens took action to resist the fiend celestials. After a bitter struggle, many worlds were destroyed and countless lives perished. After paying an unimaginable price, the 33 heavens won the final victory. However, this victory was also a Pyrrhic victory. Those powerhouses of the age of yin and yang all came to a sad end. Many of them died in the ancient war. Later, the fiend celestial was suppressed and all the fiend celestials died. Only then did the war slowly come to an end. After so many years of rest and recuperation, the 33 heavens finally had such a magnificent scene. However, none of the powerhouses of that time have been seen to this day. I don't know if any of them have survived. As Yu Chengyao finished speaking, she couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Du Xiaofu's expression was even more perverse, endless emotions surging in his heart. He had always felt that the final 2 great realms of the 9 great realms, Tao-bearing and formless, were not empty words. They must have existed in the past. After Tang Yuanshan's narration, he finally understood. It turned out that most of those powerhouses had already perished. They had died in the war between the 3,000 fiend celestials and gods in the primal chaos, and they had died in the great demon war of the 33 heavens. He was endlessly fascinated. Just what kind of two great realms were they? Why was it that after so many years had passed since the beginning of the world, no one had reached those realms? Could it be that the 33 heavens had suffered great losses in that great war and had yet to recover to this day? Pengu, the fiend celestial, and all the other powerhouses, if they had survived to this day, just how terrifying would their strength have been? As for the current 33 heavens, the strongest known boundary was the meditative oblivion boundary. How could the disparity between them be described as simply carrying the Tao and formless? Tao-bearing and formless, these two legendary realms, do I have a chance to touch upon them? Du Xiaofu's heart filled with endless emotion. For countless years, countless heroic figures had emerged from the 33 heavens, but he had never heard of anyone being able to step into these two great realms. From this, one could see just how difficult it was. Du Xiaofu couldn't help but sigh. Towards these unreachable realms, even if he couldn't personally reach them, just being able to experience them was good enough. This fiend celestial war realm is a battlefield left behind from the past. So, if we encounter any remaining fiend celestials, we will fight to the death. There will be no leeway, Yu Qingyin softly said. The slaughter of the fiend celestial war realm in the past had left behind too heavy of a wound. Their hatred had continued to this day. As long as they encountered those fiend celestials, it would be a slaughter. Du Xiaofu listened to his words and nodded. He asked again, then how was the fiend celestial suppressed in the past? Also, was he suppressed in the fiend celestial war realm? Also, what about great divinity Pengu? With his terrifying strength, did he not survive? He really wanted to know where the fiend celestial was suppressed. Since the fiend celestial had escaped from the fiend celestial war realm, it was likely that the fiend celestial was here. In addition, Pengu, who had created the heavens and earth, was able to survive until the end of the Great War between the 3,000 fiend celestial chaos and even opened up the 33 heavens and countless small worlds. One didn't need to think to know just how formidable he was. Could it be that even such a powerhouse couldn't survive in the Great War of the fiend celestial war? This? Yu Qingyin bitterly smiled. He glanced at Du Xiaofu and spread out his hands. I don't know what you're asking. There are no corresponding records in the ancient records. Regarding the Great War that occurred at the beginning of the world, it seems that all the ancient records in the 33 heavens are very vague. They only record the general process, but the details are greatly lacking. However, I think that with the fiend celestial strength, it isn't impossible for great god Pengu to pay the price of his life to suppress him. So that's how it is. Du Xiaofu nodded and muttered. He was a little disappointed. Could it be that there really weren't any powerhouses that had survived to this day? Even great god Pengu, who had created the heavens and earth, was not an exception? If so, it would be too much of a pity. Back in the chaos space, Du Xiaofu had heard Elder Kong speak of the divine wilderness heaven lock array. Presumably, the master of that unparalleled array was also a powerful master, not much weaker than the fiend celestial war realm. The divine wilderness heaven lock array had completely enveloped the entire 33 heavens, killing countless fiend celestials. It was hard to imagine just what sort of level its master's cultivation had reached. Du Xiaofu stood where he was, not speaking for a long time, carefully digesting everything he had heard today. The age of primal chaos and the age of yin and yang. These were two grand and intense great eras that surged forward with great momentum. He longed for them, wishing he could be there and witness the prosperity of life. However, all of this had already gone with the wind. All of the past had been annihilated in the chaos of the fiend celestial war, annihilated in the dust of history. Divine Sovereign, let's continue forward. Since we've come to this fiend celestial war realm, we must properly plunder it. Although there will be many dangers, there are many benefits that we cannot easily give up. After a long time, Fatty Fan Yushu narrowed his eyes, leaving only a slit. However, a bright light was emitted from them. Haha, that's right. There are countless lucky chances here. We cannot easily let them go. Beside Fan Yushu, Meng Dongyang also laughed heartily. This fiend celestial war realm, after tens of millions of years of nourishment, would definitely give birth to extraordinary treasures. The crimson nether flower, underworld soul grass, and ebony wood they had found were all good things, but the deeper they went, the greater the benefits would be. Du Xiaofu nodded and no longer said anything. After casting aside the endless thoughts in his mind, he began to lead the group deeper into the fiend celestial war realm. Time slowly passed, and more than 10 days passed in a flash. During this period, Du Xiaofu and the others found many good things. The greatest harvest was the crimson nether flower, but it was much more than when they were in the periphery. In addition, they also found several stalks of underworld soul grass. These were treasures that could temper the soul to a certain extent. However, they did not see any more terrifying treasures like ebony wood. That's... On this day, when more than 20,000 people split up and advanced, Du Xiaofu, who was at the front of the group, suddenly raised his eyebrows and looked ahead. Several thousand kilometers away, a figure flashed and quickly disappeared. When Du Xiaofu looked again, the figure was already faintly discernible and could no longer be found. Who was it? Yu Qingyan also noticed this situation and asked in confusion. Those who came to the Fiend Celestial War Realm were all from the 35 Holy Lands and 72 Divine Kingdoms. Presumably, the major forces would be like them and would not easily split up. However, the figure that flashed and disappeared just now was clearly alone, but when they looked again, it had disappeared. Let's go take a look. Du Xiaofu called out, and then took the lead to fly forward. That place was a scarlet-black mountain range. All of the rocks had been stained with too much blood, and after thousands of years of weathering, they had become dull and lusterless. Moreover, they were accompanied by a dense aura of blood and slaughter. Du Xiaofu clearly felt an aura that was very similar to this space from the figure that flashed just now. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The people of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom all followed, and soon, they had crossed several thousand kilometers and arrived at the mountain range. Escaped? Du Xiaofu stood on a lone peak, and his gaze scanned the surroundings as he searched carefully. He was a little suspicious. After the figure appeared just now, it disappeared without a trace. This was really strange. Over there. At this moment, Yu Yuran from the Broken Moon Palace shouted. Her slender body rose into the air and chased in a direction. In fact, Du Xiaofu was faster than her. His figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. Using the first form of Fuyao, he directly passed through the space barrier and appeared in a cave. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yu Qingyan, Yu Qingyao, Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoren, Tang Yuanshan, and more than 10 cultivators at the peak of the late stage of truth-severing flashed one after another and then appeared not far from Du Xiaofu. Everyone gathered in a circle, surrounding a figure in the center. This is, in the distance, Zhang Haoren opened his mouth and his jaw almost fell. Looking at the figure surrounded in the center, he was speechless. Under his gaze, a humanoid creature stood there, nervously and cautiously looking at the people surrounding it, and made a defensive posture. This humanoid creature's body was covered with pitch-black scales that emitted a cold light. Its face, palms, and every part of its body was shining with a cold light. The scales were dense and had a metallic luster flowing around them. It looked extremely terrifying. A pair of dark green eyes looked around and stared at Du Xiaofu and the others warily. This is the demon race? The same thought rose in everyone's mind at the same time. They had never seen such an appearance. When had there been such a creature in the 33 heavens? It really is the demon race, Du Xiaofu murmured. He was no stranger to this appearance. In the divine martial world and the devil religion fought for so many years, those powerhouses came in different forms, but there were also many creatures in this form. The great demon emperor was one of them. Chapter 28-29. Translator. H2DH2 Mr. On top of that, layers of dark demonic energy rolled around the scaled creature's body, faintly emitting from its body. This could not be faked and directly revealed its identity. There are actually remnants of the demon clan. Yu Qingyan, Yu Chengyao, Tang Yuanshan, Zhang Haoran, Yu Yuran, and the others all became serious. Looking at the figure in the middle, the young disciples of the Yu Qing divine kingdom all had murderous looks on their faces. The existence of the demon clan was an endless source of pain for the ancient beings of the 33 heavens. Even now, when they saw the demon clan experts appear, they would not let them go and vowed to kill them all. Human. Facing the encirclement of the experts, the demon clan spoke in a gloomy and hoarse voice. It was like the sound of stones rubbing against each other, making people feel uncomfortable. On his face, the pair of dark green eyes were suffused with a sinister coldness, mixed with a bloodthirsty light. The demon clan is no longer what it used to be. Since we have met here today, then go to hell and continue to serve your Lord Demon Ancestor. These words came out of Zhang Haoran's mouth. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly raised his sword and violently attacked the demon clan. The dazzling sword light slashed through the space and instantly descended upon the demon clan's man. Human, don't even think about killing me. All of a sudden, the devil clan people roared in anger. Waves of pitch-black devil chi surged out, forming a black light shield above their heads. Chi chi chi. The sword light carried the majestic power of the law and instantly shattered the black light shield. Under the huge impact, the demon clan violently spat out a large mouthful of dark green blood. Then, the sword light did not weaken and brazenly slashed at the demon clan's head. However, it was caught by the demon clan's hands, and a series of sparks sputtered. Borrowing the terrifying impact of the collision, the demon clan rapidly retreated and instantly flashed into the distance, wanting to escape. This scene stunned Du Xiaofu, Yu Qingyin, Tang Yuanshan, and the others. Everyone was very clear about Zhang Haoran's strength. However, he was one of the most outstanding people among the younger generation and should be regarded as an outstanding talent. That sword strike just now, even though it wasn't his full strength, it still contained at least 30 to 40% of his strength. Even Yu Qingyin and the others didn't dare to use their hands to block that sword light. However, the devil race did it, and even accepted it. Could it be that its physical body was strong to such an extent? This demon's scales are very powerful. They are like gold and iron. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and said softly. As he spoke, he gently waved his hand, and a net of light fell from his hand, directly trapping the fleeing devil within. The power of the two primordial laws intertwined and tightly bound him, causing him to be unable to break free. Capture it. Fatty Fanyushu let out a strange cry and flew out with a large number of figures, once again surrounding the demon in the center. However, this time around, they did not hesitate in the slightest. All of them instantly attacked with their full strength. Under the radiance of the laws, they directly imprisoned the devil race. Human, quickly let me go. The devil race howled from his mouth, and his voice sounded frightening for no reason. He struggled violently, and waves of dense devil chi surged out, releasing a monstrous power. This was also a strong expert. His true cultivation was not below Fanyushu and the others. In addition, the scales on his body were very hard, comparable to a divine weapon. In your dreams. Fanyushu snorted coldly and led a dozen people to do their best. They displayed the power of the laws, firmly binding the devil race. The devil race should be killed. A middle stage true severing stage expert roared angrily, and then a long saber suddenly appeared in his hand, with clear light circulating. His eyes widened in anger, and his killing intent shot straight into the night. He was about to walk over and give the devil race a slash. Don't kill him first. Du Xiaofu walked forward and stopped the person's actions and said, We just entered the Fiend God battlefield not long ago, and do not know much about this place. And this devil race has been trapped here for countless years. It's better to get some information from him than to wander around aimlessly. After saying that, he suddenly stretched out 5 fingers and grabbed the devil race in front of him above the head. Roar! Waves of miserable screams came from the devil race's mouth, piercing through gold and splitting stone, directly penetrating the soul. Many of the gods seizing stage cultivators were instantly pierced by this piercing sound, and their heads were about to burst open. At the same time, Many early-stage true severing stage cultivators' hearts shook, and they could not stand steadily. If not for Yu Qingyin, Yu Chengyao, and the others' timely actions, using their absolute cultivation to set up restrictions to isolate that terrifying sound, many people would not have been able to hold on for a breath of time, and would have been directly killed by the devil race's screams. Roar! Under Du Xiaofu's palm, the devil race let out a series of long screams, sounding incomparably miserable. But the purple-robed youth just gently closed his eyes and did not move at all. He continued to extract the information he wanted from the devil race cultivator's mind. After a long while, Du Xiaofu opened his eyes, and a large amount of power burst out from his hand, and a large amount of law light began to flow from his palm down the devil race cultivator's body, carrying with it an incomparably sharp qi, and in an instant, the devil race cultivator's body was torn apart and finally, with a bang, turned into a pile of ashes. God King, did you get anything? Fatty Fan Yushu eagerly asked Du Xiaofu as he eagerly looked at him. Of course I got something. Du Xiaofu looked at the fatty and smiled faintly. Hearing this, many people immediately surrounded him, and all of them looked at him. Our previous guess was correct. This Fiend God battlefield is incomparably huge. From the devil race cultivator's memories, I learned that this place is really the size of a large world in the 33 heavens. Du Xiaofu said, somewhat rueful. Perhaps this Fiend God battlefield was also a large world when it was first opened, but because of the devil race's attack, it became a land of death, and under the corrosion of excessive blood qi, it could no longer give birth to new life. Obtaining such a result, the others all felt a slight chill in their hearts, but they did not say anything. After all, this result was something they had expected. Is there any other information? At this time, Yu Qingyin asked. Everyone wanted to know this question. This Fiend God battlefield was extremely huge and was not smaller than any large world. If they relied on these people, who were at the peak of the late stage of truth severing, to explore, who knew how many years it would take. And if they could obtain more information from the devil race cultivators, then their following actions would be much more convenient. Of course. Du Xiaofu nodded and said, many people from the Supreme Chong Rong Heaven have entered the Fiend God battlefield and have already caused some commotion, causing the remaining devil race cultivators here to be vigilant. The devil race cultivator just now was sent out to scout the situation. There are still many remnants of the devil race gathered in the Fiend God battlefield. They are very strong, and their overall numbers are huge. We have to be careful. In addition, there are many terrifying danger zones here, and for countless years, no devil race cultivator has stepped into them. From the memories obtained from the devil race cultivator, he was very wary of that terrifying danger zone. But Du Xiaofu did not know how terrifying it was inside. No matter what, since we have come to the Fiend God battlefield, we have to take a look. Yu Chengyao walked lightly in front of Du Xiaofu and said. Du Xiaofu nodded when he heard this. He had the same thought. Since they had come in, they had to take a look. Even if there was great danger there, they had to take a look first. Here, there is a desolate palace and a desolate ancient ruins. They are both places that people fear. In addition, there is also a place that is the most terrifying. It is called the Gates of Hell. No one dares to step into that place. It just so happens that the primordial ruins are relatively closer, so let's explore it first. Du Xiaofu used the devil race cultivator's memories to filter out some useful information and said to everyone, okay, Yu Qingyin, Yu Chengyao, and the others nodded. Let's go. Du Xiaofu did not delay any longer and once again led everyone on their journey. However, before they could travel for 7 or 8 days, they came across an extraordinary place. This place was still very far away from the primordial ruins, but the terrifying aura it emitted was something they had never seen before. There is actually such an ancient forest here. In everyone's line of sight, a vast and boundless forest appeared not far away, boundless and boundless. Every tree in the forest was tall and towering, and the trunk was very thick. It would probably take dozens of people to wrap their arms around it. However, these ancient trees were only left with bare branches. They were dark red in color, and not a single green leaf could be seen. Their vitality had long been cut off, and they looked abnormally dilapidated. Layers of fishy wind blew past, and the bloody aura in the air became even stronger in the forest, almost choking the nose. Such a vast forest is actually completely soaked in blood, causing its vitality to be cut off. Yu Qingyan looked ahead in shock and said in horror. Obviously, this was a place that had not been overly involved in the Great War back then, but there was too much killing in this space. The blood flowed here, and the fishy wind blew here, affecting the growth of this forest. The soil in the forest was reddish-black, mixed with some indistinguishable rotten things. It was very moist, like a shallow swamp. The bloodstains on the ground have not completely dried up after so many years. Meng Dongyang's eyes widened as he exclaimed. With a little exploration, he could tell that the swamp in the forest was formed by a mixture of blood. I'm afraid that in the beginning, the vitality of this forest was not completely extinguished, and it was still absorbing the blood of living creatures. However, when the environment of the entire divine demon battlefield circulated, the murderous aura eventually affected the growth of the forest. Zhang Haoran speculated. The blood that had not dried up for thousands of years had turned into a bloody mud that covered the forest. Such a scene made one's scalp tingle a little. He had no idea how much blood essence had been gathered there. This forest should be the first to grow when the world first opened, and it has a very strong vitality. It is also because of this that under the influence of blood, an endless amount of bloody aura has condensed here. Tang Yuanshan swept his gaze across the vast land and said, this forest had not been affected by the Great War, and had even grown for a certain period of time. No one knew whether this was a good or bad thing. Under the absorption of blood over the years, the bloody aura had further transformed into a bloody aura that gradually destroyed the vitality of all the trees and formed this area. Let's go in and take a look. Du Xiaofu waved his hand and swooped down into the forest. He landed directly on the ground, gently stepping on the soft soil. Sometimes, when his feet landed on the ground, there would be a pop sound of bubbles. Compared to the trees around him, his figure was extremely small. It was not an exaggeration to describe him as an ant compared to a tree. The aura here is so scary. I can't take it anymore. In the crowd, a seizing god expert gradually began to tremble. His face was ashen, and his whole body was about to collapse. Not only him, but the bodies of the nearly 10,000 seizing gods around him were also shaking. They were on the verge of collapse from the impact of the bloody aura. If you can't hold on, don't force yourself. Everyone, enter the desolate ancient space. Du Xiaofu frowned, looked around, and then said to the crowd. The desolate ancient space opened and sucked in those who could not hold on. He did not dare to let these people out of the forest. No one knew what would happen next. If a group of seizing gods were to be left outside and encountered an accident, the losses would be great. Let's continue forward. Yu Qingyan called out and walked side by side with Du Xiaofu, continuing to advance into the forest. This forest was truly vast. Its circumference was probably no less than a few million kilometers. If they were to walk forward step by step, who knew how long it would take them to traverse this place, let alone explore some of the things within. So, the speed of the seizing gods was also very fast. They practically turned into black shadows, and after a few whooshes, they went into the distance. As they went deeper and deeper, more people felt that they could not bear the terrifying aura here. This bloody aura was too strong. It affected people's souls and made their primordial spirits tremble. Du Xiaofu did not hesitate at all and directly sucked He Jibai, Yu Qingliang, Fan Yushu, and the other early-stage seizing gods into the desolate ancient space. However, Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong, the two peak early-stage seizing gods, remained. In this way, there were only 100 or so people left by his side. They were all at the middle stage seizing gods and above. What a scary place. If I was alone, I wouldn't come in even if you beat me to death. Yu Chengxi unconsciously shivered and felt that his body was somewhat cold. He had just broken through to the peak early-stage seizing gods and could only barely resist the bloody aura invading his body by circulating his cultivation with all his strength. The environment here was too scary. It was dark and damp, and the surrounding tall trees stood erect one after another, making this place seem like a maze. There was always a feeling of not being able to find one's direction as they went deeper. Can you do it? If you can't, just say it and go into the desolate ancient space with them to hide. Du Xiaofu raised his eyes to look at Yu Chengxi and said so. We'll hold on a little longer. Duan Yizong gritted his teeth and said. He did not want to hide like this. This experience could also be considered a small test on the path of cultivation. So, he could only bitterly hold on. Du Xiaofu nodded and did not say anything more. He continued to move quickly and rushed towards the center of the forest. Not long after, Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong were indeed unable to hold on and were affected by the terrifying aura in the forest. Their faces were deathly pale, and wisps of black qi twined around their skin. Quickly enter the desolate ancient space. If you force yourself to hold on, it will affect your cultivation. Du Xiaofu turned his head and said to the two. Yu Chengxi and Duan Yizong looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Then, they directly entered the desolate ancient space. Emperor God, I'm afraid we can't hold on for much longer. Let's go in together, so you can advance quickly. At this time, a middle stage seizing god spoke up. In order to take care of them, Du Xiaofu and the others were still prepared to use their own power to envelop everyone. This way, it would greatly affect the speed of their advance. According to the situation in front of them, they definitely would not be able to hold on for much longer. It was better to be more straightforward and directly hide. Okay, Du Xiaofu readily agreed, and the other middle stage seizing gods all entered the desolate ancient space. Soon, Du Xiaofu's surroundings were only left with Yu Qingyan, Yu Qingyao, Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoren, Tang Yuanshan, Yu Yuran, and the other late-stage seizing gods. In total, there were only 14 people left. We have to be careful. I keep feeling that this place is not simple. Yu Chengyao looked forward and said softly, endless bloody and murderous aura has condensed, and in the end, it has corroded and turned into a bloody aura. This place either contains a great ominous object, or it will give birth to a precious treasure. Du Xiaofu's eyes flashed, and he said as if he was talking to himself, I'm thinking that the possibility of a great ominous object appearing is a bit higher. Yu Qingyan smacked his lips and said as he looked at everyone, this forest was very terrifying. But any place like this, after countless years of change and evolution, would definitely produce something that was difficult to see. It was probably something that could not be seen in the 33 heavens, and the most likely thing was that an extremely terrifying thing would appear. If that was the case, they would probably face unimaginable danger. It had to be known that this was a battlefield of the demon race at the beginning of the world. Billions of creatures died here, and the strength of the murderous aura was difficult to find in the world. It was naturally not difficult for some ominous object or demonic object to be born here. Of course, there was also another possibility. Extreme Yin gave birth to Yang, and things would move in the opposite direction. If this forest produced some precious treasure, there was also a small chance. However, everyone only thought about this possibility and did not dare to truly hope for it. After all, this chance was very small. Du Xiaofu and the dozen or so people continued to advance. In the monotonous and dry environment, another half a month passed by in the blink of an eye. Just as they had expected, the aura here was becoming more and more terrifying. If those middle-stage seizing gods had not entered the desolate ancient space, they would definitely not be able to hold on anymore. Chapter 28:30. At this point, even Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoren, Yu Qingyan, Yu Yuran, and the others felt immense pressure. The evil blood qi invaded their bodies, and everyone's bodies were covered with a thin layer of black qi. Everyone relied on their strong power of laws to keep the black qi outside. In comparison, Du Xiaofu was much better. He had the immortal Xin body, so the terrifying aura couldn't really invade his body. Even if some aura entered his body, it was quickly refined. That's... On this day, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly flashed as something appeared in his line of sight, attracting his attention. This is Yu Qingyao, Tang Yuanshan, Yu Yuran, and the others' eyes trembled as they were surprised by what they saw. Without thinking, They flashed from where they were and approached in an instant. After taking a closer look, everyone instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. Blood. Blood demon black Ganoderma. So this legendary thing really does exist. What a terrifying place to grow such a terrifying thing. More than a dozen people looked at each other in amazement. In front of them, there was a huge plant that was as tall as a person. It looked like a mushroom, but it was actually a huge Ganoderma. The Ganoderma's crown was the size of 2 people and 4 arms, and its roots were as thick as a wash basin. Its entire surface was black and faintly emitted a red light, releasing a fragrance. Blood demon black Ganoderma. This is an amazing thing. Meng Dongyang clicked his tongue in admiration. His eyes were wide open, as if he had been frightened. No wonder such a treasure has never been seen in the 33 heavens. It turns out that only the boundless blood chi of the divine demon battle boundary can nourish such a rare treasure. Zhang Haoran also sighed, his eyes burning with passion. This blood demon black Ganoderma is definitely a supreme treasure. It's the biggest harvest we've gotten since entering the divine demon battle boundary. Tung Yuanshan couldn't help but lick his lips and rub his hands. Using this thing, we can effectively temper our primordial spirit and strengthen our soul power. In the future, on the path of cultivation, the power of comprehension will definitely increase explosively, Yu Qingyin said after a moment of silence. Any cultivator who reached a profound level of cultivation relied on comprehending everything in the world to improve themselves. If one wanted to grasp the boundless laws, it was not something that could be done just by relying on the growth of one's physical strength. One also needed a strong comprehension ability. This blood evil black evil also contained an endless amount of evil aura after being invaded by the evil aura for countless years. However, at the same time, it also possessed an extremely powerful nourishing effect because it was able to survive within the evil aura of the blood evil chi. These two powers neutralized each other, making the blood fiend black zoisha a rare treasure. It didn't exist like the underworld soul grass, where one had to constantly pay attention to whether or not they would be affected when refining it. Once a cultivator consumed it, as long as their cultivation was not too weak, they would be able to absorb it easily. It was truly a rare treasure. I can't let go of such a good thing. Du Xiaofu looked at the blood fiend black zoisha with sparkling eyes. This stalk was very large, and was enough to divide among the dozen of them. After refining it, the young disciples of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom would be greatly improved in the Divine Devil battle realm. As he spoke, Du Xiaofu stretched out a hand and slowly grabbed the blood fiend black zoisha. This kind of treasure shouldn't be easily obtained. He needed to slowly investigate it. However, just as Du Xiaofu's hand reached out, the space in front of him suddenly exploded. In the blink of an eye, the space crack suddenly swelled up, and a terrifying sword light shot out from it, aiming directly at Du Xiaofu's chest, intending to cut him in half. Emperor God, be careful. Seeing this scene, Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoran, Tang Yuanshan, Yu Qingyin, and the others all cried out in alarm. This sword strike came too suddenly. No one expected it, and they were all overwhelmed with shock. The murderous aura within the sword radiance was vast and mighty. The surrounding void was also confined by a terrifying force, making it impossible for anyone to escape. Even if everyone wanted to help Du Xiaofu, they were simply unable to do so in time. Before the dozen people from the Yuqing Divine Kingdom could finish their words, the sword radiance had already reached Du Xiaofu's chest. It carried with it an unparalleled power and directly sliced Du Xiaofu's body in half. Then, it was engulfed by the boundless light. What terrifying power! Who was it that launched a sneak attack? Yu Qingyin, Yu Chengyao, and the others were all sent flying by the terrifying power and smashed into giant trees. After they landed, they all let out a muffled groan. Their faces darkened as they looked around, trying to find the attacker. Where is the Emperor God? Tung Yuanshan looked around and also tried to find Du Xiaofu's trace. The sword light just now was very powerful. It was so powerful that if they faced it head-on, it would be very dangerous and their lives would be in danger. However, they knew that with Du Xiaofu's strength, he shouldn't have been killed in one blow. The purple-robed figure that was destroyed should have been an afterimage. So there is such a terrifying expert among the disciples of the unparalleled Chong Rong heaven. Everyone's eyes trembled fiercely. Apart from the demon race, only the younger generation of the unparalleled Chong Rong heaven had entered the fiend god battle realm. There shouldn't be anyone else here. Judging from the aura of the sword light just now, the vast and fierce intent was absolutely terrifying. It was definitely not something that a demon race person could possess. Clearly, the person who launched the sneak attack was a disciple of some power. Just as these thoughts flashed through everyone's minds and they were searching for traces of Du Xiaofu and the person who had attacked, an angry roar came from the void and suddenly exploded. "Sneaky scoundrel, come out and pay your respects to this emperor." This was Du Xiaofu's voice. It was fierce and domineering, and there was endless killing intent. As soon as he finished speaking, the void in front of him was smashed through with a bang. A figure shot out from it and flew hundreds of thousands of miles before stopping. Along the way, the figure smashed countless trees. Under everyone's gazes, Du Xiaofu also flew out of the void in the opposite direction. After he appeared, he quickly sent a voice transmission to Yu Qingyan and the others, saying anxiously, "Quickly attack together and seize the blood fiend Black Zoisha." Hearing such a sentence, the dozen or so people didn't need to think and surrounded the blood fiend Black Zoisha again. The dozen or so late-stage truth-severing cultivators exerted their strength at the same time. Layer after layer of law light poured down and surged towards the blood fiend Black Zoisha. Needless to say, the person who attacked just now was very strong. Even Du Xiaofu was somewhat afraid. Moreover, the other party was clearly aiming for the blood fiend Black Ingot. No one wanted this treasure to be snatched away. "Oomph! A bunch of chickens and dogs. How dare you snatch the treasure in front of my jade feather holy land?" Accompanied by such words, after a few swooshes, no less than 20 figures flashed out of the void and directly rushed towards Yu Qingyan and the others. On these 20 or so people, the power of law flowed endlessly, fluctuating with a fierce aura. In an instant, the space where Yu Qingyan and the others were located was bound. The power of the law of space is so strong. Everyone from the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom was shocked. The average cultivation level of this newcomer was much higher than theirs. When these people jointly used the power of the law of space, it actually made their side feel as if they had fallen into a swamp, unable to move. So it's people from the Jade Feather Holy Land. Yu Qingyan's eyes became incomparably deep, and he felt an unprecedented pressure in his heart. The Jade Feather Holy Land was one of the 35 Holy Lands. Although this Holy Land was not extremely strong, it could be ranked 13th or 14th among the 35 Holy Lands. Their overall strength was much stronger than Yu Qing Divine Kingdom. Even if the thousands of immortal powerhouses from the 3,000 boundless worlds attacked at the same time, it would definitely not be as easy as crushing the Ju Spirit Holy Land. Even if they could win, they would have to pay a great price. "Fight together," Yu Chengyao shouted. Under the suppression of the law of space, it was very difficult for them. The cultivations of the 20 or so people were very strong. They were at least at the true severing pinnacle stage, and there were even 2 people who had reached the true severing pinnacle stage. If they wanted to break through this suppression, they would have to go all out to resist. At this time, Yu Chengyao and the others did not care about the blood fiend Black Ingot. No matter how precious this thing was, it was not as precious as their lives. If they did not resist in time, they would be suppressed and killed very quickly. However, just as they were preparing to fight, Du Xiaofu's words rang in their ears again. "Take the blood fiend Black Ingot with all your strength. I will fight them." With a flash, the purple-robed figure rushed out from the void. Without any hesitation, Du Xiaofu unleashed the second transformation of the green spirit armor. His gigantic dragon body danced in the void, domineering and domineering. In less than a breath's time, the space suppression formed by the 20 or so people from the Jade Feather Holy Land was shattered, making a sound like porcelain shattering. What a strong boy! The 20 or so people were shocked by Du Xiaofu's strength. Moreover, the azure dragon's body that he had transformed into also made everyone gasp in amazement. I don't believe that with so many of us, we can't suppress him. A young man from the Jade Feather Holy Land said coldly, and then suddenly moved, rushing towards Du Xiaofu again. 10 people go and take the blood fiend black ingot. The rest of you hold this boy back. Right at this moment, the figure that had been blasted flying earlier quickly returned and issued such an order. Yes, Holy Son. Under his instructions, half of the people from the Jade Feather Holy Land no longer continued to entangle with Du Xiaofu, but rushed towards Yu Chengyan and the others. At the same time, the Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land also raised his sword and slashed towards Du Xiaofu. A terrifying cultivation erupted, and the sword directly rose into the sky, cutting the whole world in half. A terrible crack appeared in the void, pushing to both sides, and this space looked like the sea was being split in half by a strong force. A holy son? Du Xiaofu's dragon mouth opened and closed, letting out a dragon roar as he coldly snorted. So what if you are a holy son? In front of this emperor, you still have to kneel. As soon as he finished speaking, his 2 dragon claws suddenly began to draw a strange trajectory, releasing a vast aura. Wong. The 8 trigrams appeared in the void, and the power of the law of matter flowed and rose, carrying with it the power to suppress the world. Terrifying heavenly lightning, earthly fire, mountains, lakes, seas, and other scenes pulsed, as if evolving into a boundless world. At the same time, the absolute hegemony domain was also released, blending with all the scenes of the law of matter, causing this world to be directly separated from the void. Everyone from the Jade Feather Holy Land except for the Holy Son, as well as the dozen or so masters from the Yuqing Divine Kingdom, were all included. What terrifying strength! Where did this boy come from? I feel like I can't move. Although the power of the law of space is not stronger than ours, when combined with the law of matter, I can't resist. This person's strength is definitely not below the Holy Son's. The 20 or so people from the Jade Feather Holy Land were shocked. When had they ever fought against such a terrifying opponent? Even if their Holy Son went all out, this was probably the most he could do. Most importantly, these people could clearly feel that the boy's cultivation was only at the peak of the true severing late stage. However, the law of matter and the law of space could combine so perfectly. Who in the same generation in the 33 heavens could do this? This was simply too inconceivable and hard to believe. Quickly break free and take the blood demon Ganoderma. If you don't act now, it will be too late. In the eyes of these people, Yu Qingyin, Yu Chengyao, and the others were not affected at all. Instead, because of the purple-robed youth's actions, the aura they gathered together could no longer suppress them. The dozen or so people were trying their best to collect the blood demon Ganoderma. They were worried that if they delayed any longer, this supreme treasure would really fall into the hands of others. Kill. At this moment, the Jade Feather Holy Land's Holy Son's sword slashed down, brazenly slashing at Du Xiaofu's 8 trigrams. Chilala. A terrifying power erupted, and the 8 trigrams were instantly torn apart. All the scenes shook and almost shattered. Du Xiaofu's dragon eyes narrowed. The power of this sword was too strong. As expected of a holy son, it was much more terrifying than the Tsangming Divine Kingdom's first princely Zheng. After the sword slashed open the 8 trigrams, it still had some momentum left to descend. Du Xiaofu let out an earth-shattering dragon roar, and his dragon body twisted into the air. He swept out with his divine dragon tail and directly attacked the sword beam, causing it to explode with a bang. Under the terrifying force, the 8 trigrams shook, but fortunately, Du Xiaofu managed to control it in time, and it did not really collapse. However, a long wound had appeared on his dragon tail, and fresh blood was dripping down. We broke free. At this time, one of the 10 people from the Jade Feather Holy Land who rushed towards Yu Qingyin shouted. They joined forces to attack and finally broke free from the terrifying space shackles the moment the 8 trigrams shook. Quickly kill them and take the blood demon Ganoderma. Go to hell, weaklings. These 10 people all roared loudly and charged madly towards Yu Chengyin's group. Oh no, these people from the Jade Feather Holy Land are too strong. The God Emperor alone has to take care of us. I'm afraid he won't be able to resist them, Tung Yuanshan said solemnly with great worry. They believed that with Du Xiaofu's strength, it would not be too difficult for him to kill these people from the Jade Feather Holy Land. But now, they needed to seize the blood demon Ganoderma, while the God Emperor had to take care of them while facing more than 10 people. It was too dangerous. This situation was different from when they fought against the top 100 cultivators of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. These people from the Jade Feather Holy Land were very strong. Including the Holy Sun, there were 3 true Severing Perfection stage cultivators. Moreover, the Holy Sun's strength was not something an ordinary true Severing Perfection stage cultivator could compare to. The sword in his hand was also not ordinary, otherwise, how could it hurt the God Emperor's azure dragon body? Don't worry about me. These people can't hurt me, Du Xiaofu shouted as his dragon body swayed horizontally in the void, and he rushed towards the Jade Feather Holy Sun. He controlled the 8 trigrams, and the power of the laws of matter and space surged out, once again restraining the other 20 people. But now that the other party was prepared, he could not stop them. Divine Thunder Cauldrons, kill them for me. These words came out of Du Xiaofu's mouth. At the same time as he faced the saint, the 9 divine thunder cauldrons streaked across the sky in a perfectly straight trajectory, directly heading towards the 10 experts who were pouncing towards Yu Chengyan and the others. Hong Long Long. The 9 purple thunder cauldrons crushed the void, and the power of a peerless artifact burst out, like a mountain crushing the sky. The vast aura rolled out, and the people from the Jade Feather Holy Land could not dodge at all. They were smashed by the giant cauldrons one by one. Inside Du Xiaofu's world domain, they could not avoid the power of the divine thunder cauldrons. Pooh, pooh, pooh. A series of muffled sounds rang out, accompanied by the sound of people coughing up blood. Of the 10 people charging towards Yu Chengyan, 9 of them were instantly sent flying, all the way until they left the range of Du Xiaofu's domain. Needless to say, even if these people did not die, they were half dead. What a terrifying artifact! The last person's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and it rolled down, causing his eyes to become a little blurry. His heart was filled with endless horror, and he thought that if he was also hit, his bones would definitely be broken and his vitality would be greatly damaged. He did not dare to continue to rush towards Yu Chengyan and the others. His strength alone was not enough, and he could not change anything. He could only wait for others to come to his rescue. No matter what, he had to avoid this attack first. However, as soon as this thought appeared in his mind, his pupils immediately shrank. Hong Long Long. Hong Long Long. The 9 divine thunder cauldrons rushed forward again, and they actually rushed towards him together. That terrifying aura rushed over like a great river, carrying with it the power to crush everything. The monstrous purple thunder covered the void, like a waterfall dancing in the air, and there was an infinite aura of destruction in its domineering aura. No, seeing the 9 divine thunder cauldrons gradually enlarging in his eyes, this master let out a long howl and wanted to escape, but he could not escape at all. He watched as the 9 cauldrons smashed into his body, and then his whole body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Chapter 28:31. A late-stage truth-severing cultivator was instantly killed, dying an unnatural death. Seeing this scene, Saint Blue Feather's eyes suddenly turned cold. As for the others from the Blue Feather Holy Land, they all felt a chill in their hearts. Their throats trembled violently, and sweat appeared on their foreheads. The purple-robed young man who had transformed into an azure dragon was really too terrifying. So many of them besieged him, but they still couldn't suppress him. Not only that, one of their own masters was killed in an instant. Even if their holy son went all out, it would be impossible for him to achieve this. Walala. At the same time that the master was killed, a terrifying sword light swept across the sky and once again slashed into Du Xiaofu's 8 trigrams diagram. This sword light was dazzling, and with a burst of power, it tore apart the 8 trigrams diagram and then slashed into Du Xiaofu's azure dragon body. Du Xiaofu's dragon abdomen was slashed open, as if his stomach had been cut open. He had to pay a heavy price to resolve this attack. However, amidst the blood, the flesh and blood on the azure dragon's abdomen quickly wriggled and recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. "How dare you kill my Blue Feather Holy Land's people, boy? You're courting death." Blue Feather Holy Land's holy son retreated slightly after his attack, his voice cold as he stared at the giant azure dragon circling in the sky. "Humph," Du Xiaofu coldly snorted, accompanied by a heaven-shaking dragon roar, his killing intent soaring to the sky. "So what if you're Blue Feather Holy Land? Since you dare to snatch benefits from this emperor, don't blame me for being ruthless." As he spoke, his dragon eyes turned and stared unblinkingly at Saint Blue Feather. "Boy, who are you? How dare you call yourself emperor?" Only at this time did Saint Blue Feather really pay attention to his opponent. From the moment he appeared until now, Saint Blue Feather had heard the other party call himself emperor more than once. Saint Blue Feather was a little surprised in his heart. Could this boy have some great background? After Saint Blue Feather asked that question, a Holy Land disciple suddenly exclaimed with extreme surprise, calling himself an emperor. Could he be the Yuqing Divine Emperor? As soon as this sentence came out, everyone from Blue Feather Holy Land came to a realization. Those who entered the Celestial Devil battlefield are all of the younger generation. Among the 72 divine kingdoms, it seems like only the Divine Emperor of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom has entered. That's right. The news has just spread in the Divinity and Devil battlefield. They say that the Yuqing Divine Emperor is here. Who would believe that the Divine Emperor of a country was actually a true severing cultivator? This is simply unimaginable. Looks like the rumors are true. This kid must be the new Yuqing Divine Emperor. The Yuqing Divine Kingdom is really unique. They do things that others don't dare to do. Even a truth-severing cultivator can become the ruler of a country. The group of people from the Holy Lands couldn't help but exclaim. They were all shocked by Du Xiaofu's identity. But very quickly, another voice rang out, causing the hearts of the crowd to sink. This Yuqing Divine Emperor is indeed powerful. No wonder he dares to speak so arrogantly in the Celestial Devil battlefield and trample all the disciples of the 35 sacred grounds under his feet. These words came from the mouth of a disciple from the Holy Lands. During this period of time, they had heard many stories about the Yuqing Divine Emperor. Almost every faction in the Celestial Devil battlefield was honing his name. It was said that not long ago, the people from the Tsaming Divine Kingdom were brutally trampled by the Yuqing Divine Emperor. Their fifth prince was killed and their first prince's superior true weapon of the laws, which represented the highest authority of the Divine Emperor, was taken away. Most importantly, before the Yuqing Divine Emperor left, he used the people from the Tsaming Divine Kingdom to declare war on all the 35 sacred grounds. He said that even the saints and saintesses of the sacred grounds were like clay chickens and pottery dogs. They couldn't even withstand a single blow from the Tsaming Divine Kingdom, let alone the first prince of the Tsaming Divine Kingdom. As for the people from the other 71 divine kingdoms, they were all ignored. They weren't even mentioned at all. This insolence stunned everyone when they heard the news. They were all shocked by the Yuqing Divine Emperor's arrogance. However, many people understood after thinking about it. It was very likely that the people from the Tsaming Divine Kingdom were unwilling to admit defeat. They were stirring up trouble and making enemies for the Yuqing Divine Emperor. However, their actions were undoubtedly successful. The name of the Yuqing Divine Emperor spread across all the major factions. Whether it was the people from the 35 sacred grounds or the other 70 divine kingdoms, everyone was deeply interested in him. Some experts even said that if they met him, they would definitely fight him. At the same time, there were also arrogant people who said that they would definitely trample Du Xiaofu. Therefore, the only person who could call himself a divine emperor in the Celestial Devil battlefield was the new Yuqing Divine Emperor. The identity of the purple-robed youth in the form of the azure dragon was obvious. I was wondering who it was. So you're the Yuqing Divine Emperor. At this moment, the holy son of the Jade Feather Holy Land became serious. Whether or not the arrogant words of trampling all the holy sons and holy daughters came from the mouth of the youth in front of him, it was undeniable that he was very strong. At the very least, The Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land did not have a high chance of winning against him. Such an outcome made the Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land disheartened. The battle just now allowed him to weigh the gap between them. "That's right, it's me." Du Xiaofu did not deny it, and said with certainty. He was not surprised that the Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land recognized him. It was obvious that the news of his battle with the Tsangming Divine Kingdom had spread. "You're indeed an arrogant person. However, if you really dare to treat the successors of the various sacred grounds as if they're nothing, you'll definitely die a horrible death." The Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land said with a gloomy look. These words caused Du Xiaofu to be suddenly stunned, and he didn't know where to start. However, after thinking about it for a while, he felt relieved. It must have been Crown Prince Tsangming and the others who had made up a series of stories to push him into the heart of the storm. From there, they would be able to borrow the hands of the major forces to eliminate him. Their intentions are really sinister. Du Xiaofu's eyes were cold. The next time he met the people of the Tsangming Divine Kingdom, he would definitely kill them and make them tremble in fear. They would never dare to spread rumors again. However, at the same time, Du Xiaofu opened his mouth slightly and snorted at the Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land. "I don't know how strong the successors of the 35 sacred grounds are, but if you use your strength as a benchmark to measure them, I'm afraid they're really not that good." The corners of his mouth curled up slightly with disdain. If it was a one-on-one battle, dealing with the Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land would only take a little more effort than dealing with the first prince of the Tsangming Divine Kingdom. What an arrogant person! This Holy Son wants to see how you can fight against so many of us with your own strength today. The Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land said coldly as he glanced in the direction of Yu Qingyin and the others. At this time, more than a dozen people from the Yuqing Divine Kingdom had begun to cut off the blood spirit Ganoderma and were about to take it away. If they did not act now, such a treasure would fall into the hands of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. With Du Xiaofu's strength, it would be very difficult for them to obtain it if he wanted to retreat with everyone. Everyone, attack together and kill this boy with all your strength. After he dies, as for the others, they won't be able to escape. With such a loud shout, everyone from the Jade Feather Holy Land attacked at the same time, attacking Du Xiaofu together. Hong Long Long, the terrifying power of space principles surged and weaved in the void, creating a terrifying collision with Du Xiaofu's domineering domain. These two types of energy were both related to the laws of space, and they came from the same source. As soon as they came into contact with each other, the world was instantly overturned while the heavens and the earth were turned upside down. Large expanses of space and the surroundings exploded into pieces, and it was an extremely chaotic scene. Roar! Du Xiaofu's azure dragon body kept rolling and twisting, suppressing space. Under the bright light of the 8 trigrams in the void, his body seemed to be cast from gold and iron, releasing a terrifying sense of power. Under the full attack of more than a dozen people, the 8 trigrams in the void above constantly rotated and changed, and the various scenes below shattered and reappeared, and then shattered again. Hong Long Long, the 9 cauldrons suppressed the void and rolled, suppressing the heavens and earth. While blocking one attack after another, they also smashed into many people, causing them to vomit blood and fly back. However, Du Xiaofu's azure dragon body also had large wounds, and purple gold blood flowed out and sprinkled into the void. Kill! The Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land's eyes were red as he held his sword and attacked fiercely. Terrifying sword chi pierced through the barrier of space and fell on the azure dragon's body again and again, causing terrible injuries. Since he had already fought for the black, baleful blood herb, and one of his fellow disciples had already died at the hands of Du Xiaofu, there was no reason for him to give up now. He knew very well that it was impossible for him to defeat the Yuqing Divine Emperor alone, but he also did not believe that the Yuqing Divine Emperor alone could defeat so many people on his side. Chilala, the Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land stood in the air, his hair and robes fluttering in the wind, like a god. His entire body was as bright as a rainbow, and the power of the laws swept across the area. In terms of the use of the space principles, he was even more powerful than Du Xiaofu. Time after time, he passed through the void, appearing and disappearing like a ghost, and it was hard to track him down. But suddenly, he attacked violently with his sword. However, the Yuqing Divine Emperor's strength was indeed terrifying. The combination of the laws of matter and space, as one was able to break through most of the Holy Sun of the Jade Feather Holy Land's attack. Moreover, the 9 terrifying cauldrons continuously swept through the air, injuring the Holy Sun of the Jade Feather Holy Land. As for the others, needless to say, they were all severely injured. What a perverted defensive power! How could there be someone who could cultivate the Azure Dragon body? The more intense the battle, the more shocked the Holy Son of the Jade Feather Holy Land was. He looked at the Azure Dragon flying up and down in the sky, and his eyes were filled with endless shock. The other party's defense was too abnormal. Even though he had suffered quite a bit of damage under the attacks of so many people, he was still recovering at a rapid pace. As the green dragon's body twisted and turned, there was no sign of its aura weakening. Instead, it became even more ferocious as it fought. The disciples of the Holy Land are only a... Du Xiaofu roared, letting out a terrifying dragon roar that pierced through gold and cracked stone. The void was torn apart, and heaven and earth were turned upside down. He danced wildly in the air, moving with the 8 trigrams in the void. Under his control, the 9 cauldrons attacked ferociously. It had to be said that these people from the Holy Land were really strong. They were almost as strong as the top 100 experts of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom combined. However, this time was different from the battle that day. Du Xiaofu attacked without any scruples, beating the disciples of the Holy Land into a sorry state. Altogether, 4 people had died under the divine thunder cauldrons, and 1 was directly smashed into a bloody pulp by his dragon tail. He couldn't be more dead. Generally speaking, so many truth-severing realm cultivators still could not compare to immortal realm cultivators. At the very least, when Du Xiaofu faced these people, he could still handle them with ease. Although he was injured, he did not need to retreat at all. Earlier in the Qian Su Jinghua Heaven, Du Xiaofu fought the first guy of a mortal realm expert of the heaven-devouring demon wolf clan, but he paid a great price to successfully kill him. He suffered an unimaginable injury, almost shaking his foundation. However, today, he didn't need to worry about this at all. Success. Just when Du Xiaofu and the people of the Jade Feather Holy Land were fighting with all their strength, Yu Chengyan's surprised voice sounded. Under the situation where there was no outside interference, a dozen people worked together and finally succeeded in plucking the black blood spirit Zoisha. Yu Chengyan put it into his Qinkuan bag. Such a result made them all endlessly happy. The black blood spirit Zoisha was definitely a treasure. Such a huge plant was enough for many people to take a step forward with it. As long as their cultivation base improved, the Yuqing Divine Kingdom would be able to obtain more benefits in the divinity and devil battlefield. Bastard! Seeing this scene, the Jade Feather Holy Sun cursed in a low voice. He had underestimated his and Du Xiaofu's strength. He thought that they could kill him quickly, but he didn't expect that they would drag it out for so long that the black blood spirit Zoisha was successfully plucked. If that was the case, there was no point in them continuing to fight. With the Yuqing Divine Emperor's strength, it would be difficult for them to stop him if he wanted to leave, not to mention whether or not he could snatch the treasure back. The Jade Feather Holy Land is just ours. I won't play with you anymore today. I'll come back and torture you, Holy Sun, another day. Du Xiaofu roared happily. The Azure Dragon's huge tail swept across and wrapped up Yu Chengyan, Yu Chengyao, Tang Yuanshan, and the others, sending them into the ancient, desolate space. Then, he stretched out his body and let out a loud dragon roar. He was ready to use the first form of the rising sun to leave this place. However, just as he activated the law of space, the entire space was suddenly filled with a terrifying blood spirit qi. If the space was like a huge city wall, Du Xiaofu could freely pass through it with the help of the law of space. Then now, the terrifying blood spirit qi that seeped in was like a sturdy rivet, crisscrossing every inch of the space, causing the city wall to be so sturdy that it couldn't be shaken in the slightest. Even if he used the law of space, he was still forced to reveal himself on the spot. What's going on? Why can't I pass through space? I don't know where this blood spirit chi is coming from. It's too scary. It's affecting the law of space. Retreat. I'm afraid it's dangerous. The people of Blue Feather Holy Land also quickly discovered this and cried out in panic. Everyone quickly gathered together and began to retreat in a certain direction. I'm afraid something extremely ominous has appeared. Du Xiaofu returned to his human form and narrowed his eyes, his heart beating extremely fast. He had never encountered a scene like this before. The terrifying blood spirit chi was too strong, causing the surrounding space to be greatly affected. The world order was in chaos and the space principles had lost their effectiveness. Run. At this moment, Blue Feather Holy Sun suddenly roared and quickly led everyone from the Holy Land away. His eyes stared at a certain place, and a look of panic appeared in his eyes. Following his gaze, all the trees in that direction had been turned to dust in an instant. Silently, a scarlet mist swept out from that place and quickly moved in the direction of everyone. Ho-oh! A loud roar broke through the clouds and thunder rumbled between heaven and earth, shattering the sky and cracking the earth. Du Xiaofu and the dozens of people from Blue Feather Holy Land all felt their hearts shake and their bodies become unsteady. That ominous creature was too terrifying. Just a simple roar from it had such a terrifying, penetrating power, causing one's yuan spirit to feel like it was about to explode. The blood spirit chi also took advantage of this opportunity to invade their bodies. Accompanied by such a loud roar, an incomparably majestic figure stepped out of the scarlet fog. Huge feet stepped across the forest, and with a stomp, tens of thousands of ancient trees were crushed. Deep craters also appeared on the ground. What a terrifying creature! A great ominous creature was born in this ancient forest. Du Xiaofu's heart trembled fiercely as he was shocked by the blood spirit chi. Everyone had speculated earlier that this ancient forest, which was nourished by the blood spirit chi, would either produce a rare treasure or a great ominous creature, with the latter being more likely. At this time, they had indeed found a treasure like the black blood spirit grass, but a great ominous creature had directly come knocking on their door. Du Xiaofu didn't need to think about it and directly ran away. Although he couldn't tear space, he could still fly directly. He couldn't just stay here and wait for the ominous creature to find him. The ominous creature was surrounded by a monstrous scarlet mist, concealing its true appearance. Du Xiaofu didn't dare to look back carefully. With a single step, it crossed a great distance and was actually approaching Du Xiaofu and the people from Blue Feather Holy Land step by step. This scene really made everyone panic. Since they couldn't fly, they couldn't use their fastest speed. Otherwise, it would be much easier to get rid of the ominous creature behind them. However, at this time, the boundless blood spirit chi rushed over, causing everyone to smell the scent of death. Oh! Another strange cry rang out, and everyone felt a gust of cold wind behind them, sweeping over them like a stormy sea. What the fuck? Du Xiaofu cursed and couldn't help but be speechless. He was terrified by the strength of this ominous creature. Chapter 28:32. The fiendish energy that filled the air was extremely terrifying. It was like a surging tide, and Du Xiaofu and the others were like fish in the water. They couldn't control themselves at all and were directly sent flying, rushing towards the top of the waves. This wasn't the worst of it. The most terrifying thing was that they clearly sensed something that was like an enormous mountain pressing down from behind them, and it simply intended to crush all of them into a pile of mush. The power of Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit probed behind him, and he felt a chill run down his spine. The huge thing that was pressing down on Du Xiaofu was in the shape of a palm. However, this palm was really too big. It directly covered half the sky. Before it really attacked, Du Xiaofu already felt that his body was being oppressed to the point that it stiffened, and his movements became much slower. His immortal Xin body was cracking, and blood splashed out. My life is over. Among the people from Blue Feather Holy Land, one of them screamed as his body exploded with a bang. Come with me. Blue Feather Holy Sun roared and quickly took out a palm-sized short sword from his cosmos bag. After pouring his strength into it, the small sword, no more than a foot long, instantly grew in size and directly rose into the sky, brazenly slashing at the void in front of him. Chi! Along with the sound of metal clashing, there was no huge crack in the void as expected. The surrounding space seemed to have solidified into the most solid object, and it was very difficult to cut through. However, the previous short sword was also an extraordinary object, and it still tore a small crack in space in front of Blue Feather Holy Sun and the others. Under the leadership of the Holy Sun, the remaining dozen people of Blue Feather Holy Land all rushed in and quickly fled. Seeing such a scene, Du Xiaofu was speechless and a little dumbfounded. The other party was indeed worthy of being the successor of a holy land, and the treasures on him were not something he could compare to. At this moment, he had directly fled. Now that he was the only one left, what should he do? Next time when I come out on an adventure, I must plunder Master's place. Du Xiaofu clenched his teeth and said. He regretted that he did not ask Yu Yuqian for some treasures before coming to the Divine Demon battlefield. This was definitely a big mistake. With the strength of the force behind Yuqing Divine Kingdom, the things they could take out would not be worse than Blue Feather Holy Land. It seems that I can only continue to hide. Feeling the palm of the monster behind him getting closer and closer, Du Xiaofu could not help coughing up a mouthful of blood. He smiled bitterly and no longer delayed. He entered the ancient, desolate space and disappeared from the forest. Ao. After Du Xiaofu, the monsters, the great monster roared repeatedly. The trees, the monster, and the trees into dust. It was filled the boundless evil chi. Evils filled the entire space. After patrolling a few times and confirming that all the humans had escaped, the ferocious creature let out an angry roar again. With a sweep of its paw, tens of thousands of miles of forest was instantly flattened. It was extremely neat. After the ferocious creature vented its unwillingness, it did not leave. Instead, it burrowed into the hole and disappeared. Soon, the entire area became strangely quiet, and not a single sound could be heard. Brother Du, God King, Your Majesty. Inside the ancient desolate space, Yu Qingyin, Yu Qingyao, Fan Yushu, and He Zhibai saw Du Xiaofu and quickly gathered around him. Du Xiaofu forced a smile and briefly told them what had happened outside. They couldn't help but be frightened. That great monster had appeared so suddenly that no one had time to react. If it weren't for the ancient desolate space, Du Xiaofu would have been in danger. Judging by the realm of the 33 heavens, I'm afraid that the monster's competence isn't less than third sky of a mortal realm. After calming down, Du Xiaofu secretly estimated and felt a heavy feeling in his heart. He didn't plan to go out for the time being. He would stay in seclusion for a while to observe the situation and wait for an opportunity to take action. After entering the Divine Demon battlefield, we've collected many good things. Everyone, distribute them. Let's refine them in the ancient, desolate space. Looking at the 20,000 people around him, Du Xiaofu took out a large amount of precious herbs from his Qingkuan bag and piled them on the ground. Most of the herbs were crimson nether flowers. The dark soul grass he had found was also in the pile. Then there were the things he had taken from the fifth prince of Tsangming Divine Nation and the cultivator of the Law of Soul. They were all here, including many crimson nether flowers and the precious black soul wood. I have a lot here too. Tang Yuanshan also took out all the precious herbs and placed them with Du Xiaofu. I have dozens of crimson nether flowers too. I have some too. Many experts stepped forward and handed over what they had obtained in the celestial demon battle realm. Very quickly, a small mountain was piled up in front of Du Xiaofu. Many precious herbs were piled up together. Although these precious herbs were very monotonous, with the crimson nether flower as the main ingredient, such a huge amount was enough to frighten anyone. The most precious thing is still this black blood spirit Zoisha. Yu Qingyin praised and placed a black blood spirit Zoisha that was taller than a person on the ground. The process of obtaining this treasure was not easy. They had to pluck it under the fierce attack of the Jade Feather Holy Lands. If it weren't for the Divine Emperor holding back more than 20 people, this black blood spirit Zoisha would never have fallen into our hands. Zhang Haoran sighed. He really admired Du Xiaofu and gradually felt some reverence for him. With his majesty leading everyone, our harvest in the divine demon battlefield should be just the beginning. Haha. Fan Yushu's fat face scrunched up and he suddenly laughed. Bootlicker. Yu Chengliang, He Jibai, Yu Chengyu, and the others all rolled their eyes and scolded with a smile. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and did not comment on this. He only opened his mouth and said, "This black blood spirit Zoisha is the most precious. To be able to obtain, it is the merit of 14 people. Then we will divide it equally." As he spoke, his eyes swept over Yu Qingyan, Yu Chengyao, Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoran, Tang Yuanshan, Yu Yuran, and the others. "That's not right." Everyone was a little dumbfounded, only to hear Yu Qingyan say, "We were able to obtain the black blood spirit Zoisha because of Martial Uncle Du's contribution. If we divide it among 14 people, I'm afraid it's not fair." Hearing these words, the others all nodded in agreement. His statement was not exaggerated at all. If Du Xiaofu had been replaced by anyone else, it would have been impossible for him to fight for so long under the siege of more than 20 people from the Jade Feather Holy Lands, and even kill several of them. If it weren't for him, the black blood spirit Zoisha would definitely be in the pocket of the Holy Land. "Everyone, there's no need to be polite with me. Since I am the Divine Emperor of Yuqing Divine Kingdom, it is my duty to lead everyone to grow together." Du Xiaofu waved his hand and said, "This black blood spirit Zoisha is large enough and should be able to help me improve a lot. If not for this, I would not have been polite with you. When I need something, I'm afraid I will directly ask you for treasures to improve myself." This, Du Xiaofu's words made everyone feel a little helpless. Everyone naturally understood what he meant. His Majesty the Divine Emperor regarded them as one of his own and would not treat them as outsiders. This meant that as long as he had something, everyone would have it, and if he happened to need something, he would ask for it from others. At this moment, many people had a strange feeling in their hearts. It seemed that the Divine Emperor of their generation was very different from the members of the royal family of other countries. If you think it's inappropriate, how about this? Seeing that everyone was still a little hesitant, Du Xiaofu spread his hands and said, "Everyone will distribute it according to their needs, but it must be done in order of strength. If the 14 of us still can't finish using this black blood spirit Zoisha, then let those in the middle stage of true severing stage refine it. This method is feasible." Yu Qingyan nodded, expressing his agreement. "Let's do as the Divine Emperor says. If everyone continues to push back and forth, it would be disrespectful to refuse." Zhang Haoran also kept nodding, agreeing with Du Xiaofu's words. "Our Majesty, many strong people were moved." Of course, they knew the purpose of Du Xiaofu's decision. He wanted everyone to improve together. The treasures were obtained by everyone, so everyone should have a share. Distributing according to the strength of cultivation would make everyone believe in it, and no one would say anything. First, the black blood spirit Zoisha. After distribution, it will be the ebony soulwood and underworld soulgrass. These two things are also very rare, but you need to pay attention when refining them. Du Xiaofu looked at the many treasures piled up on the ground and continued, "These treasures are definitely not enough for us to distribute among more than 20,000 people. In the end, even more people will have to suffer. However, if we continue to obtain benefits in the Fiend God battlefield, we will continue to distribute according to need, and not let anyone come here in vain," he said very seriously, his gaze moving from the ground to everyone. "With your Majesty's words, it is enough. We have not made any contributions, but we can get a few crimson nether flowers. We are already ashamed." Some cultivators in the early stage of true severing stage and seizing God stage solemnly clasped their fists and said to Du Xiaofu. They knew that they wouldn't get a share of the black blood spirit Zoisha, ebony soulwood, and underworld soulgrass. However, they had obtained quite a bit of underworld soulgrass. On average, they would be able to obtain 2 to 3 stalks. More importantly, most of them didn't find any treasures in the Fiend God battlefield. They were very clear about this point. Besides that, most people were unable to come into contact with the best few treasures. Not to mention refining and obtaining benefits from them, The slightest carelessness would cause one to directly die from the backlash of the treasured medicine. If that happened, it would be a great loss. It's decided then. The treasures will be placed here. If you need them, come and get them yourself. Du Xiaofu waved his hand, indicating for everyone to start cultivating. He took a piece of the black blood spirit zoisha. It was about 1/20th of the total, and he felt that it was enough for his needs. After that, he went to a corner of the desolate ancient space and sat down cross-legged beside the principal of Tianwu Academy. Previously, in the Qin Su Jinghua sky, with the help of Chu Daoju, Ling Feng, Long San, and many other immortal realm experts, Du Xiaofu resonated with their auras. In the end, a resonance was formed between him and the principal of Tianwu Academy. As a result, his comprehension of the law of time and the law of space was greatly improved. He felt that there was a chance for this resonance to be triggered again. This kind of opportunity was hard to find in the world. Let's cultivate as well and strive to improve. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had entered a state of cultivation, Yu Qingyin didn't hesitate. He took a piece of the black blood spirit zoisha and found a place to sit down. Soon, over a dozen cultivators in the late stage of true severing stage took a piece of the black blood spirit zoisha and sat down cross-legged. I don't have the face to take the greatest benefit. Let's start with the ebony soul wood. A middle stage true severing stage expert walked out and glanced at the remaining black blood spirit zoisha. After that, he took a piece of the ebony soul wood and found a corner to cultivate. Soon, the ebony soul wood was divided up and a few leaves of the underworld soul grass were also taken by a few people. Let's take a scarlet underworld flower first. I feel that I'm about to break through my bottleneck. Perhaps I can use this to break through. An expert muttered and took a stalk of scarlet underworld flower. As for the others, they didn't take anything and just sat down cross-legged to cultivate. Not long later, the desolate ancient space quietened down. A faint fluctuation rose from everyone's body and the power of law flowed endlessly. Rays of light intertwined with each other, forming a dreamlike color. The black blood spirit zoisha can nourish the soul. I hope that with your help, my comprehension will improve by another step. Du Xiaofu thought in his heart as he slowly refined the black blood spirit zoisha. This object was nourished by an endless amount of blood spirit zoisha and condensed a boundless vitality. Under its effect, a living being's soul force would receive a terrifying upgrade. And with the improvement of one's soul force, one would become more familiar with everything in the world. The fluctuations of the power of law would also be easier to grasp. As a result, one's comprehension would increase. This was the terrifying effect of the black blood spirit zoisha. It was also because of this that when the person from the Blue Feather Holy Land saw Du Xiaofu pick it, he didn't even think about it before directly attacking. Hoo! From Du Xiaofu's Naiwen Palace, waves of bloody aura spread out and enveloped his primordial spirit, producing a continuous sound. It was as if flames were burning steel, refining the power of his primordial spirit until it was crimson red. Hoo! At the same time, a large amount of green light flashed and shuttled back and forth, constantly pouring into his yuan spirit, providing it with a steady stream of vitality to prevent the blood spirit zoisha from harming his yuan spirit. A black blood spirit zoisha that could grow in a place filled with blood spirit zoisha could easily imagine how terrifying its vitality was. And this vitality was like water used to quench steel. Its role was to make one's yuan spirit more condensed and resilient. As time passed, under the repeated tempering, Du Xiaofu's yuan spirit became more and more pure and transparent. The huge red-bone horse monkey form became more and more solid, and even the tiny impurities were removed, gradually becoming flawless. This was a fundamental improvement, tempering, causing Du Xiaofu's yuan spirit to become more and more resilient. Time slowly flowed, and because the time inside the ancient desolate space was accelerated, Du Xiaofu didn't care much about how much time he spent here. Even if he cultivated here for 7 or 8 years, only 10 days would pass in the outside world. So the situation inside the divine demon battle realm wouldn't change much. Chi. Not only Du Xiaofu, but Yu Qingyin, Yu Qingyao, Tang Yuanshan, Yu Yuran, and the other late-stage true severing stage cultivators all had surging auras. Under the tempering of the black blood spirit Zoisha, their yuan spirits emitted much more profound fluctuations than before. As for the other experts who obtained the black soulwood and underworld spirit grass, they were all improving. Although their improvements were strong and weak, big and small, the terrifying auras were all linked together, surging in the ancient, desolate space, appearing exceptionally magnificent. The law of the soul can actually be called the law of life. While tempering his yuan spirit, Du Xiaofu was also constantly comprehending new things. He knew that the law of the soul in the 33 heavens had another name, called the law of life. Life was the greatest miracle in this world. Whether it was the various powerful races, or the ant-like flowers, birds, fish, and insects, or even the grass and trees, they all had life. Their foundation was life force. However, the concept of the soul was a level higher than life. The soul was the product of the combination of life and wisdom. However, any life, under sufficient conditions, had the opportunity to produce its own intelligence, which was wisdom. Just like the demon spirits, it was like this. In the demon world of Shenwu world, Huolei Laozu was formed by a bolt of lightning and fire. The Black Water Monarch of the Black Water River was formed by a river of blood. The Black Water River military advisor's body was a willow tree. I'm still lacking a lot in the aspect of the law of the soul. If I want to explore a deeper level of the law of the soul, I need to first increase the strength of my yuan spirit, and then use my own body to create a bigger breakthrough. Du Xiaofu muttered in his heart, comprehending some things. Now, his cultivation of the law of the soul had only reached the early stage of true severing stage, and he did not have a thorough understanding of the great existence of life. Only by gaining a deeper understanding of himself would he be able to follow some clues to reach a higher level of the law of the soul. Black blood spirit Zoisha, refine. Thinking of this, Du Xiaofu stopped his own comprehension and began to refine the black blood spirit Zoisha with all his strength. His yuan spirit went through wave after wave of erosion, and under the hammering, it actually emitted a sonorous sound. After an unknown amount of time, when the redbone horse monkey yuan spirit was refined to a point where it could no longer advance, Du Xiaofu stopped refining. At the same time, the black blood spirit Zoisha was almost exhausted. There was only a trace of medicinal power left, and after another wave, it all scattered. This feeling is really good. Du Xiaofu closed his eyes, and an incomparably wonderful feeling rose in his heart. He only felt that his yuan spirit and the various powers of heaven and earth had become much more intimate. The traces of the law of the soul were much easier to perceive than before, and also much clearer. This feeling was a little similar to a normal person's vision suddenly increasing by several times, and they could see many mysteries that were normally difficult to see. Chapter 28:33. This wonderful state caused Du Xiaofu to be incomparably overjoyed. To be able to become more intimate with the laws and principles of heaven and earth, the order of the great Tao, this was the pursuit of every life form that stepped onto the path of cultivation. Everything in the world was constructed from the laws. That was why it was so brilliant and varied. If one wanted to reach a higher boundary, then they had to gradually understand these laws and grasp them in their own hands, making themselves stronger. Du Xiaofu's goal was to cultivate the 4 great primal laws to the deepest level. Then, he would attack the immortal realm and walk a path that few people in the 33 heavens had ever dared to walk. He knew that this path would be extremely difficult. Just the 4 great primal laws were vast and boundless. Wanting to grasp all of them was not an easy matter. After that, when he attacked the immortal realm, no one knew what kind of hurdles he would face. This was because no one in the world had ever attempted this before. Even if he succeeded in breaking through to the immortal tier, there was still a very long way to go. It had to be known that merely the law of matter contained the various derivative states of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, and so on. When he reached the severing reality tier, he had to grasp all these derivative states and reach perfection. And at the immortal realm, what he had to do was to fuse all of these laws together into one, condensing them into the source of the matter laws. Origin, origin, Tracing back to the source, this was the source of all laws and laws. Only by condensing the source strength could one be considered to have grasped the highest truths of the world. With every movement, one would carry the charm of nature. But while it was easy to say, it wasn't so easy to do. Otherwise, Chu Daoju, Ling Feng, Long San, Yu Taiyin, and the other immortal ninth layer cultivators wouldn't have been trapped in that realm for so many years, unable to find a chance to break through and step into the meditative forgetfulness realm. Moreover, Du Xiaofu's ambitions were great. What he wanted to fuse wasn't as simple as just the matter laws. He wanted to condense all of the four great primal laws into the source strength. Not to mention doing this, just saying it out loud was enough to make the entire 33 heavens go crazy. My primordial spirit has improved by quite a bit. Let me try comprehending the various great laws. Du Xiaofu exhaled lightly and released his energy. He attempted to come into contact with the principal of Tianwu Academy, hoping to resonate with him once more. Through this, he would be able to improve his comprehension of the laws of space and time. However, after a long time, he was somewhat discouraged. Last time, with the help of Chu Daoju and the other 200 Undyings, he finally had the chance to touch that faint frequency, resonating with the Dean's energy. However, this time was different. His own training was still too weak, and the things he comprehended were far from comparable to Chu Daoju and the others. As a result, he failed. He continued to work hard for a long time, but still couldn't enter that profound state. It seems that this matter still requires some luck. Du Xiaofu sighed softly. He opened his eyes and looked at the sleeping figure wrapped in light before closing them again. Since I can't resonate with the Dean of Tianwu Academy, I'll have to comprehend it myself, he thought to himself. With the improvement of his primordial spirit, he could pry into more of the laws of heaven and earth, as well as the mysteries of the universe. If he wanted to improve himself, he could rely on himself to comprehend it. Time flowed by unknowingly, and the years in the ancient, desolate space felt like a day. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed, but only a few days had passed in the outside world. In these 5 years, Du Xiaofu continued to comprehend, and the aura on his body became more and more profound. The power of the scarlet pheasant monkey's primordial spirit was even stronger than before after being tempered thousands of times. Because of this, his attainments in the 4 great primordial laws had improved. Although he didn't make a breakthrough in his cultivation, there was still a significant improvement. In terms of the laws of time and soul, he had already reached the peak of true severing primary stage. There was only a small bottleneck blocking him from breaking through to true severing middle stage. In terms of the laws of space, he was also getting closer to perfection. He had grasped about 80 to 90% of it. As for the laws of matter, Du Xiaofu had already reached the peak of true severing late stage when he was in Qian Su Jinghua Heaven's Yamada-headed serpent clan. And this was because he had deliberately suppressed it. Otherwise, he could have borrowed the power of the Void 8 trigrams to directly reach perfection, and then have the chance to break through to immortal. Cheng Yin, Cheng Yao, and the others have improved so much. Du Xiaofu woke up from his meditation and looked at the people sitting around him. A hint of surprise rose in his eyes. His eyes widened as he discovered that the auras on Yu Chengyin, Yu Chengyao, and the others had also become more and more condensed and terrifying. But what was even more shocking was that Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoran, and Teng Yuanshan, these 3 fellows had extraordinary aptitudes to begin with, and had been at the peak of truth-severing stage for many years. At this moment, they had even charged to the consummate stage of truth-severing stage with a single sword strike, and had comprehended a complete primordial law. This was terrifying. The cultivation of true severing consummate stage was an absolutely powerful existence in any major force. Among the young disciples of the Jade Feather Holy Land who attacked them earlier, only 3 had reached true severing peak, but the Yuqing Divine Kingdom suddenly had 3 more. At this time, the auras of Meng Dongyang and the others were very restrained and not obvious at all. But just sitting there, they gave off a feeling of being engraved there. This blood demon black Anaderma is indeed worthy of its reputation of improving comprehension. It's really a rare treasure. Du Xiaofu could not help but sigh and click his tongue. The blood demon Black Ganoderma definitely played a crucial role in this outcome. It allowed the three to reach such a terrifying level after thousands of years of accumulation. It was not difficult for them to rank at the top of the supreme Changrong heaven. It's a pity that Qingyin and Qingyao's accumulation is still a bit lacking. Otherwise, they could have used this opportunity to reach true severing peak directly. Du Xiaofu's gaze shifted to Yu Qingyin and Yu Chengyao. These two were much younger than Meng Dongyang and the other two. The difference in their cultivation time was more than 1,000 years. In a situation where the advantage in cultivation talent was not too big, this kind of gap in cultivation time was not easy to spread in a short period of time. I wonder what's the situation outside. Du Xiaofu saw that many people around him had woken up, but no one made a sound as they were afraid to disturb those who were cultivating in seclusion. He didn't say anything either. He just thought that there was a terrifying, ominous creature outside the desolate ancient space. He didn't know if it was still guarding nearby. That ominous creature was too terrifying. Its strength was not less than a third sky of immortal realm expert. With Du Xiaofu's current strength, he couldn't resist it at all. A creature condensed by the blood demon qi. It's another demon spirit. Du Xiaofu sighed inwardly and thought so. That ominous creature had appeared in the forest. After thousands of years of growth, it had some intellect. It was really intimidating. Its existence was the body of a demon spirit. Moreover, it was similar to the soul concubine. However, the soul concubine was a remnant soul. From this point of view, the two of them were fundamentally different. What? All of a sudden, Du Xiaofu's face stiffened while he was pondering. He suddenly thought of something. Many creatures in this world are born with intellect, like the human clan and the beast clan. But the demon spirits are different. They have their intellect. To some extent, they can interpret the life principle better. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. It was like a raging fire was burning in his heart. If the ominous creature outside was condensed by the blood demon qi, and it had intellect, it must be a life and soul that were born later. If he were to start from it, perhaps he would be able to learn more about the mysteries of the law of the soul? Du Xiaofu couldn't stop thinking. The more he thought about it, the more excited he was. He hated that he couldn't dissect that ominous creature to study its body and primordial spirit. However, thinking about how intimidating it was, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but shiver. If it wasn't an ordinary ominous creature, it would be really intimidating. If he wasn't careful, he would be slapped into a flat cake in just a blink of an eye. Moreover, the blood demon qi was really thick. It wasn't a joke. If too much of it got into his body, it would be really troublesome. In the worst case, it could even threaten his life. Thinking about this, Du Xiaofu felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured on his heart. Half of his heart was chilled. If that ominous creature was only at first sky of a mortal realm, he would definitely try. But now, he could only shake his head with a forced smile. Sigh. So worrying. Du Xiaofu was so upset. He squatted on the ground and sighed. The young disciples who had woken up were confused. They didn't know what was going on. Emperor God, why are you sighing? At this moment, a voice arose. It was Yu Yuran of the Broken Moon Palace. Her competence had also improved. She was now at the same level as Yu Qingyin and Yu Chengyao. I don't know if that big thing out there is still there. I want to catch it. Du Xiaofu's finger pointed at the void, lowering his head. Which big thing? Emperor God, are you talking about that ominous creature? Yu Yuran's red lips parted. She looked at Du Xiaofu disbelievingly. She didn't think that the Emperor God was joking. He wasn't the kind of person who would joke casually. However, although Yu Yuran didn't face that ominous creature herself, after hearing Du Xiaofu talk about it, she felt chills all over her body. Who would have thought that this guy was just sitting there and sighing left and right? He was actually trying to catch that ominous thing. This was really hard to imagine. Your Majesty wants that ominous creature. Could it be that you have some use for it? While many people were shocked, Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoran, and Tang Yuanshan woke up one after another and looked at Du Xiaofu. After breaking through, they had settled down for a period of time. At this time, their cultivation had stabilized at the Great Circle of Truth severing stage. It's definitely useful. Do you have any ideas? Du Xiaofu didn't hide his thoughts. He told them that he wanted to make a breakthrough in the law of soul. Perhaps he could use that ominous creature to cultivate. But as soon as this idea came out, everyone was once again shocked. They all knew that Du Xiaofu's attainments in both the laws of matter and the laws of space were very deep, and they only felt that this guy might really walk the path of cultivating two primitive laws at the same time. But who would have thought that he was actually still obsessed with the laws of soul? This was truly frightening. Every young disciple was filled with awe towards His Majesty the Divine King. They couldn't even describe how much they worshipped him. In this regard, Du Xiaofu didn't explain much. He had his own ideas and didn't need others to agree with him. The three of us have just broken through. But if we want to fight that ominous creature, even if we join forces, I'm afraid it's not enough. Tung Yuanshan smiled bitterly and kept shaking his head. He also couldn't think of any good ideas. That ominous creature was extraordinary. With their cultivation, they would be directly smashed flat as soon as they appeared. I'm also worried about this. Du Xiaofu spread his hands and said helplessly, "Everyone, help me think about it. If we can get it into this space, I can easily suppress it." When he spoke, he lowered his eyes and didn't expect too much. Although the ancient desolate space was a domain that he had absolute control over, there had to be a way to let that ominous creature in. As long as we can get it in here, Meng Dongyang pondered for a moment and said, "That ominous creature is condensed from blood qi. The reason why it attacked us is that the aura of us living people has a nourishing effect on it. He came from the refining God temple and cultivated the law of soul, so he had a deeper understanding of the ominous creature." He thought for a while again and then said, "But we don't know how intelligent that ominous creature is. If it has only developed some ignorant consciousness, we can deceive it and maybe even have a chance to subdue it." This idea is worth a try. Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly lit up and he became excited as if he had eaten a great tonic. After he finished speaking, he eagerly got out of the ancient desolate space and left a sentence that echoed in everyone's ears. "I'll go see if that big guy is still here." As his voice fell, the purple-robed figure had already left the space, leaving behind many young masters with wry smiles. His Majesty Shenhuang is really swift and decisive. Not only is he swift and decisive, but his actions are also absolutely crazy. I hope he can walk a path of absolute dominance and make all the geniuses of the 33 heavens pale in comparison. Space, matter, soul, 3 primitive laws. Just thinking about it is shocking. If he succeeds, our Yuqing Divine Kingdom will also have a day when we stand at the peak. Many people began to discuss fervently, sighing for Du Xiaofu. They found it hard to believe that there was really someone in this world who could surpass severing truth with 3 primitive laws and achieve an immortal body. However, the reality was even more terrifying than they imagined. Du Xiaofu's plan was to surpass severing truth with 4 primitive laws. On the other side, after Du Xiaofu left the ancient desolate space, he landed on a huge plain. Holy shit, all of this couldn't have been caused by that big guy, right? His gaze swept over the surroundings in amazement. The huge forest that originally stood tall had already turned into ashes at this time, and even the ground had been scraped 300 meters deep, revealing the brighter red soil. At this moment, looking around, the surrounding tens of thousands of miles was a flat land, extremely orderly. I wonder if that ominous thing is still nearby. Du Xiaofu flew in the void, releasing a vast aura from his body, which constantly spread out to the surroundings. Just as Ming Dongyang had said, that ominous thing was extremely thirsty for the majestic life force of living beings. Du Xiaofu wanted to use this method to lure it out. However, he flew for a long time and didn't find any movement. After a while, Du Xiaofu had almost stepped all over the huge plain, but he still couldn't find any trace of the ominous thing. "Let's go look in the forest again." He thought for a moment, then turned around and flashed into the distant forest. Du Xiaofu was very patient as he carefully searched everywhere. He was not in a hurry to find that ominous thing. In any case, there might be a chance to find some good treasures in this withered forest. He would just treat it as looking for opportunities. With this thought in mind, he continued to go deeper and deeper, shuttling back and forth in the forest. Against the bloody aura that filled the sky, he moved quickly. Needless to say, after more than 10 days, he really had a huge harvest again. When Du Xiaofu opened his mouth, he almost laughed out loud. In front of him was a place of tides. There were actually a few lush green leaves growing, gently swaying. Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng. It's actually the Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng. Ha ha ha. I'm rich. I'm rich. Ha ha ha. Du Xiaofu laughed wantonly, wishing that he could sing a song on the spot and dance with joy. In the heavenly spirit record that Master Duanmu Tian gave him, there was a record of this item. Du Xiaofu recognized it at a glance. This Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng relied on endless spiritual energy to grow. It had an incomparably strong vitality and could bring back flesh and bones from the dead. As long as a strong person's body and soul were not completely destroyed, they could use this Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng to save them. This effect was heaven-defying. I'm rich. I'm rich. Du Xiaofu had never thought that he could have such a huge harvest this time. This was simply a gift from the heavens. There was no need to think anymore. He directly supported his own power of the law and enveloped a large area within it. Then, Du Xiaofu stretched out a hand and was about to pluck it. Just as he stretched out his hand, the few green leaves shook gently and gave off a sparkling light. Then, they directly drilled into the soil and disappeared. It really knows how to run. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and was not surprised at all. The heavenly spirit record had stated that this Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng had the ability to burrow into the ground. It could seek good luck and avoid calamity. It was not so easy to pluck it. You won't be able to escape from my domain. Du Xiaofu licked his lips and laughed. Since he had already found the Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng, how could he let it escape? If he did not get such a treasure in his hands, he would be struck by lightning. Chapter 28:34. Du Xiaofu's space domain had already expanded and covered a large area. As a rare elixir, the Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng had developed some consciousness and knew how to avoid danger. However, none of its movements could escape Du Xiaofu's control. With a flash, the purple-robed figure disappeared from the spot and appeared in another place. Don't run. Come into my bowl. Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up. He swept out his palms and opened up a large area of law of light, surrounding the roots of the giant tree in front of him. He moved with all his strength and did not dare to hold back. The law of space and the law of matter intertwined to suppress it. He even summoned the 9 purple lightning profound cauldrons and placed them in different directions, ready to suppress it at any time. In terms of grade, the Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng was not inferior to the Black Blood Ganoderma. It was even slightly stronger and had the effect of burrowing into the ground. Previously, Yu Qingyan, Yu Qingyao, Zhang Haoren, Teng Yuanshan, and more than a dozen people worked with all their strength and spent a lot of time to pick the Black Blood Ganoderma. Therefore, in order to avoid any accidents, Du Xiaofu used all his skills to capture the Spirit Ginseng as soon as possible. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At the roots of the dead tree in front, a green light was emitted. It kept struggling, trying to escape from the suppression. However, no matter how the light moved, it could not escape from Du Xiaofu's full restraint. Not long after, Du Xiaofu let out a low shout and suddenly withdrew his hands. Following that, a huge carrot-shaped object appeared in Du Xiaofu's hands. It was difficult to hold it with both hands. This was the Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng. Its whole body was as clear as jade, blood red and translucent, and there was a strange light flowing around it. On one side, there were a few green leaves swaying. Under the prying of Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit, he could feel that it contained endless vitality. It was so majestic that it made one's hair stand on end. Not to mention the Spirit Ginseng's body, even the few green leaves contained a strong aura. I'm rich. I'm rich. I'm rich. Du Xiaofu's whole body was trembling with excitement. He could not close his mouth, and his small face was smiling like a flower. He quickly took out a huge Jade Spirit Ginseng from his Cosmos bag and bag. He put the Blood Jade Spirit Ginseng. After rejoicing in his heart for a while, Du Xiaofu once again walked through the forest, continuing to search for traces of the blood fiend. In the air, waves of baleful blood energy permeated the air, binding the entire space, and a vicious and evil aura surged. Is to come? Is to? Sure enough, just as Du Xiaofu opened his eyes to look, an incomparably tall and sturdy figure appeared not far away and directly pounced on him. That huge foot stomped in the forest, crushing countless dead trees into pieces. What a big guy! Du Xiaofu looked at that ferocious spirit ginseng and could not help but be speechless. The last time they met, he was only in a hurry to escape and did not have the time to look carefully. Now that he did not want to escape, he looked at it seriously. Through the monstrous scarlet aura on that ferocious spirit ginseng, Du Xiaofu could see that it was an existence that looked like a strange beast. Its whole body was covered with bone spikes, like knives of different shapes inserted into its body, and it was extremely ferocious. The ferocious spirit ginseng's skin was red and green, and it was dark and gloomy. Its muscles were very strong, and it was releasing a sense of power. I wonder how the spiritual intelligence of this big guy has been activated. If it has a high level of intelligence, it will be difficult to deal with. Du Xiaofu murmured, and his whole body released a strong aura, which fluctuated in the void. He stood in the same place, motionless, and allowed the ferocious spirit ginseng to pounce on him. A huge palm covered the sky, accompanied by a pungent smell, and it wanted to smash Du Xiaofu into meat paste. Meng Dongyang had said that such a ferocious spirit ginseng was condensed from blood qi, and the energy of a living person had a nourishing effect on it. Therefore, after sensing Du Xiaofu's aura, it directly ran out, wanting to kill this human. Please don't be too smart. If you are too shrewd, it will really be difficult for me to deal with you. Du Xiaofu secretly prayed in his heart, hoping that this ferocious spirit ginseng's spiritual intelligence had not been activated too much, and it was still in a state of ignorance. Just as he was thinking, the terrifying palm in the sky had already swung down, and the entire surrounding world was trembling. Du Xiaofu's immortal Shin body directly burst open, and blood splattered everywhere. He silently calculated in his heart, and when he was about to be unable to hold on, he instantly opened up the ancient, desolate space, and his whole body flashed into it. Roar! Seeing Du Xiaofu escape, the ferocious spirit ginseng let out a terrifying roar, and it seemed to be somewhat furious. Its palm hit the air, and with a loud bang, the entire ground was flattened. Big idiot! I'm here, come and catch me. At this moment, Du Xiaofu popped out of the ancient, desolate space and shouted at the ferocious spirit ginseng. Roar! The ferocious spirit ginseng roared and directly chased after him, and another palm came flying through the air. Du Xiaofu did not dare to delay, and once again shrank his head and hid. This action caused the ferocious spirit ginseng to roar continuously, and it shook the sky until it exploded. When it was slightly quieter, Du Xiaofu popped out again. This time, he opened up the ancient desolate space and stood at the entrance. Yu Qingyin, Yu Qingyao, Tang Yuanshan, Zhang Haoren, and the others all walked to Du Xiaofu's side, and each of them released an incomparably vast aura that fluctuated in the ancient desolate space. Come and catch me quickly! Du Xiaofu roared, and winked at the ferocious spirit ginseng. Roar! The ferocious spirit ginseng roared again, as if it was tearing the heavens and splitting the earth, and it shook the souls of the people at the entrance of the ancient, desolate space. Hide quickly! Du Xiaofu screamed strangely, and led the people into the depths of the ancient, desolate space. Under the unique influence of the ancient, desolate space, the roar could no longer hurt them. However, he did not close the entrance, but still opened it wide, covering a large area. You must come in. There are so many of us waiting for you to eat us, Du Xiaofu murmured to himself, and could not help but think to himself. The reason why he did not close the ancient desolate space was to lure the ferocious spirit ginseng in, and then capture it. This ferocious spirit ginseng is really scary. However, the more ferocious the ferocious spirit ginseng is, the longer it will take for it to develop intelligence. According to my estimation, Although he has some vague consciousness, he is still far from a complete form of intelligence. Our method should work. Meng Dongyang looked at the ferocious spirit ginseng and said with a grin. Sure enough, as he was speaking, the ferocious spirit ginseng stretched out a huge palm into the ancient, desolate space and wanted to grab everyone and bring them out. However, Du Xiaofu and the others were hiding very deep. The ancient, desolate space was very big, and the ferocious spirit ginseng's arm was not long enough to reach them. Quick, everyone, release your aura and lure it in. Fatty Fan Yushu had come to Du Xiaofu's side and suddenly turned around and shouted at the crowd. His small eyes were burning with excitement, and he had never felt so excited before. Chi, under Fan Yushu's instructions, more than 20,000 people released their aura with all their might, and it formed a vast force that filled the ancient, desolate space. This action caused the ferocious spirit ginseng to roar again and again. The aura of the living was too tempting for it, and it flew directly into the ancient, desolate space. It really came in. Du Xiaofu was overjoyed, and his entire body was about to jump up. He really did not expect that it would really succeed like this. Meng Dongyang's idea was really wonderful. Roar. With a loud roar, most of the ferocious spirit ginseng's body drilled in, and it faced Du Xiaofu and the others directly. It let out another low roar, and its two large palms attacked the crowd. Hee, since you've entered my territory, then you'll have to lie down for me. Du Xiaofu chuckled and suddenly mobilized the power of the ancient, desolate space to suppress the ferocious spirit ginseng. The two terrifying palms and monstrous power were instantly wiped out by the invisible order and dissipated into nothingness. Along with it, the ferocious spirit ginseng's body was also driven and fell heavily to the ground. Roar. At this time, the ferocious spirit ginseng finally felt the difference in this space. It instinctively sensed the danger and wanted to retreat. Still want to escape? No way. Du Xiaofu snorted coldly and instantly closed the entrance of the ancient, desolate space. The ferocious spirit ginseng's huge tail swept behind it, trying to force it open, but no matter how monstrous its power was, it could not shake the ancient, desolate space at all. Under such circumstances, Du Xiaofu quickly mobilized his power and repeatedly suppressed the ferocious spirit ginseng. The ferocious spirit ginseng kept rolling on the ground and roaring continuously. It wasn't long before this ferocious beast was completely suppressed. Strands of energy of the laws condensed into the shape of chains that bound it firmly, causing it to be unable to move, and it lay on the ground like an enormous dead dog. TSK. Is this the monster formed by the ferocious spirit ginseng? Yu Qingyan, Tang Yuanshan, Yu Yuran, Fan Yushu, and the others all gathered around, carefully sizing up the ferocious spirit ginseng on the ground and exclaimed, "This big guy was not an ordinary creature. It was formed by the boundless ferocious spirit ginseng of the divine demon battlefield after thousands of years. Although it looked like a ferocious spirit ginseng at this moment, its origin was the monstrous ferocious spirit ginseng. We're really crazy. A ferocious spirit ginseng that isn't weaker than a third sky of immortal realm monster has been taken down by us." Fan Yushu chuckled, seeming to be somewhat pleased with himself. Can you be more shameless? Next to him, an expert at the middle stage of true severing realm spat and said, "If it weren't for His Majesty the Divine King's space, not to mention you, even if the old ancestor of your divine mystery sect came, he wouldn't be able to defeat it." Hearing such words, Fan Yushu scratched his head embarrassedly and sneered, not replying. Du Xiaofu ignored them and muttered to himself, "Fortunately, its intelligence hasn't fully matured. Otherwise, not to mention catching it, it wouldn't even be easy for us to escape." He rejoiced and felt that this was an extraordinary opportunity. With the help of this ferocious spirit ginseng, he should be able to make a big breakthrough in the law of souls by following the principles behind the formation of living beings and souls. This was a post-celestial life form. Even if it had the soul form of a living being, it would still leave behind deep traces of the law of souls. It was unlike the sentient life forms of the human race, beast race, tree monsters, and vine spirits. It was much more useful to find the origin of this ferocious spirit ginseng than sentient life forms. Begin seclusion and comprehend the law of souls, Du Xiaofu said as he looked at the ferocious spirit ginseng on the ground. He didn't think too much and sat cross-legged beside the dean of the Tianwu Academy. Following that, layers of formless spatial energy spread out and dragged the ferocious spirit ginseng to his side. Since it's a life form formed by the ferocious spirit ginseng, I'll just separate it into the original ferocious spirit ginseng, Du Xiaofu muttered as he pointed with his finger. Boundless power formed into sword-shaped rays of light that pierced into the ferocious spirit ginseng's body. At the same time, the law of souls rippled out and disintegrated the ferocious spirit ginseng layer by layer. Instantly, the ferocious spirit ginseng around Du Xiaofu began to rise and permeate every inch of space, enveloping him tightly. However, this ferocious spirit ginseng was extremely well controlled. It revolved around Du Xiaofu and didn't affect anyone else. Seeing Du Xiaofu's figure covered by the ferocious spirit ginseng, the 20,000-plus young disciples of the Yuqing Divine Kingdom were shocked. They all looked at the terrifying ferocious spirit ginseng with disbelief. The Divine Emperor is really crazy. That's the ferocious spirit ginseng that took countless years to form. He's actually sitting inside it just like that. Using the ferocious spirit ginseng to comprehend the true meaning of the law of souls. Who would dare to do such a thing? I'm afraid only His Majesty would dare to do such a thing. This isn't a method that ordinary people can think of. If this method really works, then His Majesty will definitely make great strides in his understanding of the law of souls. If that's the case, the Divine Emperor will have extremely high attainments in the three primordial laws of space, matter, and soul. If news of this were to spread, how many people would be scared to death? Everyone was left dumbfounded. This wasn't just because of Du Xiaofu's crazy actions of using the vicious creatures formed from blood demons to comprehend the laws of the soul, but also because of his achievements in the laws. In this world, there were few people that could compare with him. Even so, this fellow still wanted to improve in the law of souls. It was obvious that he wanted to use the three primordial laws to break through to the immortal realm. Let's continue our seclusion for a while. I have a feeling that he'll need a long time this time, Yu Qingyan said after watching for a while. That's right. With the time acceleration here, we don't have to worry about the situation outside. After the Divine Emperor wakes up, we'll go look for the primordial ruins. Meng Dongyang nodded in agreement. Then, everyone went into seclusion again. There was still a lot of ferocious spirit ginseng left behind. It was enough for some mid-stage true severing cultivators to break through. Huff, huff, huff. In the primordial space, Du Xiaofu was surrounded by a dense ferocious spirit ginseng. It was scarlet and terrifying, as thick as real blood. His entire body was soaked in it. The terrifying ferocious spirit ginseng constantly invaded every inch of his flesh and blood, causing Du Xiaofu's body to rot. Even with the full power of the immortal Xian body, he couldn't repair it in time. Looks like this blood jade spirit ginseng is going to be used up now. Du Xiaofu was a little distressed. He took out the spirit ginseng that he had just obtained from his cosmos bag and used his power to dissolve it. It turned into a clear spring that flowed in his body. Under the effect of this precious medicine, the corrosive power of the ferocious spirit ginseng was quickly dissolved. As the medicinal power continued to dissolve, his body finally returned to its original state. The ferocious spirit ginseng could no longer harm him. Begin to explore the wonders of life and soul. Du Xiaofu was a little excited. He didn't think anymore and immersed himself in it. The scarlet demonic monkey's primordial spirit pervaded around his body. At this time, although the ferocious spirit ginseng had been broken down into ferocious spirit ginseng, it did not affect its essence. It still had a strong life and soul fluctuation. Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit ginseng permeated everywhere, constantly prying into the mysteries within. In this kind of situation, time flew by. Unknowingly, 10 years had passed in the primordial space. In the outside world, more than a month had also passed. During this time, Yu Qingyan, Tang Yuanshan, Zhang Haoren, and the others woke up more than once. Through cultivation, They all made progress, but they didn't make any major breakthroughs. And among the other 20,000 people, some of the mid-stage and early-stage true severing cultivators improved a little faster. When they woke up, they saw that Du Xiaofu's state had been maintained. It seemed like he hadn't stopped for a while. All of them didn't disturb him, and they just silently cultivated as they waited. In other words, when Du Xiaofu was in closed-door cultivation and comprehending the soul laws with all his might, two figures woke up from their cultivation at the deepest depths of the Fiend God battlefield. These two figures were precisely Dongli Qihuang and Chen Yin, who'd followed the millions of young disciples to enter the Fiend God battlefield. After they entered the Fiend God battlefield, they directly arrived at the deepest depths and entered into closed-door cultivation. They didn't participate in the competition for any fortuitous encounters. I've finally recovered to the immortal realm. This feeling is truly too great. Dongli Qihuang wore a blood-red robe. His eyes were closed as he sensed the changes in his strength, and he spoke with extreme pleasure. How many years has it been? How many times have the two of us reincarnated and cultivated? We've only recovered this little bit of strength. Chen Yan's expression was gloomy instead, and he seemed to be slightly dissatisfied with his current cultivation. During the battle during the ancient times, the strengths of Pangu, exalted heavenly master, and the others were too strong. Even Lord was suppressed. The two of us were able to survive and have the opportunity to cultivate to this level. It's already very difficult. Dongli Qihuang sighed lightly as he recalled some matters of the past. Since we've awakened the memories of the ancient times, it isn't too difficult for Lord and us to reach our strongest state. However, we might not have much time left. Those old fellows hidden in the 33 heavens will absolutely not allow us to recover to our peak. Chapter 28:35. Chen Yin gazed at the sky while his vital energy was restrained to the extreme, and he didn't reveal even the slightest bit of his original ferocious aura. There really isn't much time left. The curtains to the war are about to be drawn once more. So long as my lord recovers to the peak this time, then under the circumstances that Pangu and Exalted Celestial aren't here, no one in the 33 heavens will be able to stop the rise of my devil race. A wisp of a gloomy smile suddenly appeared on the corners of Dongli Qihuang's mouth, and then two bright rays of light shot out from his eyes as he spoke. Hee. Since we've won this war, then from today onward, the 33 heavens will be the territory of the devil race, and it'll be owned by the devil race. Chen Yin smiled as well, and then he licked his lips in an extremely evil manner and said, Moreover, the living beings of all the worlds will become our nourishment. The devil race will definitely transform amidst slaughter, sublimate amidst a sea of blood, and become even stronger amidst the scarlet red that covers the sky. When he thought of this, his entire body couldn't help but tremble slightly, and he seemed to be extremely excited. It was as if he'd seen the scene of the devil race's experts covering the entire 33 heavens, and all the experts would be suppressed and become food for the devil race. After the war in the 33 heavens ends, we have to go take a look at the 3,000 worlds as well. Dongli Qihuang's pupils constricted, and he said coldly, the 3,000 worlds didn't exist when this world was born. I really want to see exactly what sort of place it is and how much benefit it can bring to my devil race. After he finished speaking, his entire body emanated waves of dense bloodthirsty aura, and even space was corroded and penetrated. We can't let down our guard too much. The Lord of the 3,000 worlds, Lu Xiaoyu, is extremely strong. Even though we haven't really come into contact with him, a strand of my Lord's soul core that transformed into a fiend god was easily suppressed by him, and we could only rely on the uniqueness of divine battle world to avoid him. Chen Yin spoke with a slightly solemn tone. Besides that, Du Xiaofu's existence is an enormous threat as well. So long as he's alive, I won't be able to rest at ease. Exactly. That kid Du Xiaofu's growth is extremely swift. If it wasn't for the memories of my past life, we wouldn't be able to compare to him at all. We must get rid of him sooner or later. Otherwise, there will be endless trouble for our demon race. Dongli Qihuang's eyes turned ferocious as he stared into the void. His killing intent was obvious. Overbearing killing intent arose in Chen Yan's heart as well. Du Xiaofu was a person whom the two of them had been enemies since a long time ago. He was indeed a rare genius. Back in Shenwu world, the two of them used everything they had, but still couldn't kill him. And more than 100 years ago in the Qin Su Jinghua heaven, they even invited the Taisher demonic dragon, the Green Blood Giants, and the Divine Netherworld clan, these three great clans, to take action, but they still couldn't take it down. As long as that purple-robed youth was alive, he was definitely the greatest threat to the devil race. He had to be eliminated as soon as possible. We came to this ancient battlefield with an important purpose. On the one hand, we want to recover our strength. On the other hand, we want to kill Du Xiaofu. Here, it's not easy for the experts of the outside world to interfere, so this is an excellent opportunity. Chunyin pondered for a short while before he spoke slowly. The Fiend God battlefield was filled with the young disciples of the supreme Changrong heaven, and they'd come here for the sake of tempering themselves and improving themselves. During this process, battles would surely arise, and those old fellows wouldn't interfere too much in the competition of the younger generation. So to Dongli Chihuang and Chen Yin, this was the best opportunity to kill Du Xiaofu. We absolutely can't allow any mishaps to occur this time. Du Xiaofu must die. Dongli Chihuang suddenly swung his fist and fiercely smashed it into the void, causing a terrifying black hole to appear in space. We can't delay any longer. If a heaven-defying figure appears among the disciples of the various powers that have entered this place, and is able to rely on the fortune here to quickly break through to the immortal realm, then it'll be extremely troublesome for us. Chunyin pondered for a moment before he spoke. If it was in the outside world, it wouldn't be easy for ordinary young disciples to break through. The people that had entered this place had only cultivated for a few thousand years, and they were still very young, so it was simply impossible for them to break through to the immortal realm. But it was different in the Fiend God battlefield. There were countless fortuitous encounters here, and if the strongest disciple of any holy land obtained a heaven-defying fortune, then it wasn't impossible for him to break through to the immortal realm in a short period of time. Even though this possibility was extremely small, Chun Yin didn't want to take such a risk. At this moment, the two demon attendants had just recovered their cultivation bases at the first sky of the immortal realm, so it was relatively easy for them to deal with a group of true, severing realm experts. But if an immortal realm expert appeared among them, then it would absolutely be a huge problem. It's time to find Du Xiaofu. Dongli Chihuang stood up, glanced at Chen Yin, and said, "Let's go. I presume he's improved during these days in this ancient battlefield." After he finished speaking, he silently vanished on the spot. It was extremely strange. No matter how much he's improved, Du Xiaofu won't be able to escape death this time. No matter how fast he's improved, it's impossible for him to recover faster than the two of us. Cheon Yin coldly snorted, and his entire body suddenly exploded, turning into a bloody mist. Then, this bloody mist began to wriggle, seeping into the void bit by bit, leaving no trace behind. The place instantly became eerily quiet, as if the two people just now had never appeared at all. There was only endless terrifying power circulating, fluctuating with strange and indescribable brilliance. In the desolate ancient space, Du Xiaofu silently cultivated for another 70 years. Adding the 10 years he had spent previously, he had spent a total of 80 years. In these 80 years, the scenery outside his body didn't change much. It was still the same as before, with the blood and evil energy surging and filling the air. As for the other 20,000 experts, some of them improved very quickly. Several people who were originally at the peak of the God-seizing realm directly broke through the threshold of the true severing realm. They all had the primordial qi given to them by their sex, making a breakthrough. Among the experts at the early stage of the true severing realm, there were 4 or 5 people who had stepped into the middle stage, and their strength had greatly improved. However, the close to 100 middle stage and late stage true severing realm experts didn't improve so much. Their strength was originally very strong, and it wasn't easy to improve again. But after more than 80 years of cultivation, the aura on everyone's body had become much more condensed, and their foundation was stable. The Divine Emperor is still comprehending. I don't know how long it will take. More than 80 years have passed, and it's been almost 10 months in the outside world. I don't know if anything major has happened in the Divine Devil battlefield. It would be great if we could go out and take a look. Let's wait a little longer. When His Majesty wakes up, we'll continue to explore together. Everyone was discussing. They didn't know how long Du Xiaofu would need to cultivate this time. However, everyone knew in their hearts that their Divine Emperor had spent such a long time cultivating. When he woke up, he would definitely have a great harvest. They were somewhat expectant. They wanted to see how far Du Xiaofu's space could go, and whether or not he could make great progress in the law of the soul. But at the same time, everyone felt somewhat helpless. This desolate ancient space was a sealed place. If Du Xiaofu didn't take the initiative to open it, they couldn't leave at all. From the time they entered this ancient forest until now, almost a year had passed in the outside world. No one knew whether or not something major would happen. Those people from the 35 holy lands and 71 divine nations, whether or not they had discovered some great benefits, or whether or not a terrifying battle had broken out. Huff, huff, huff. Just as everyone was talking, a sudden sound came from where Du Xiaofu was. Hey, there's movement. Zhang Haoran raised his eyebrows and quickly looked over. The others also cast their gazes at the place where the murderous aura was pervading. They saw that the terrifying and boundless scarlet power suddenly began to shrink, receding like the tide and gradually becoming smaller. Following that, the figures of Du Xiaofu and the sleeping person on the ground appeared in everyone's line of sight. Has the Divine Emperor finished his seclusion? Some people looked at the purple-robed youth who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed and muttered, "The Divine Emperor's aura has changed again. It's very deep and difficult to understand. His body seems to have some special charm, and it's very different from before. Is this because of the breakthrough in the law of the soul? He really used that ominous object and made great gains. Good. Our Majesty is really amazing. I feel like I can't suppress my admiration for him anymore." The 20,000 people couldn't help but begin to whisper. Every pair of eyes that looked at Du Xiaofu were filled with endless amazement. Under their perception, Du Xiaofu had become even more elusive than before. His aura was as vast as the sea, as deep as the abyss. Needless to say, this was definitely a sign of a breakthrough. He must have made great progress in the law of the soul. In this way, when His Majesty the Divine Emperor faced enemies in the future, he would be able to use the law of the soul to fight. Then, just what kind of terrifying realm would his strength reach? Buzz, buzz, buzz. After the baleful blood energy completely entered Du Xiaofu's body, his body emitted waves of fierce fluctuations, shaking the void. What followed was a pressure that was powerful enough to make one's primordial spirit tremble, pressing down on everyone's primordial spirit. What a terrifying power. This is the power of the law of the soul. I feel like I can't take it anymore. Someone suddenly cried out in alarm. His body shook violently, and he almost collapsed to the ground. He knelt down in front of Du Xiaofu. I feel it too. It's too terrifying. No, help me up. Immediately, many people began to cry out. At first, it was only some God-seizing realm cultivators. Later, even dozens of true, severing realm cultivators could no longer resist. It was as if they were facing the might of the heavens. One after another, they fell to the ground with a plop. Fortunately, Yu Qingyin, Tang Yuanshan, Zhang Haoran, and other true severing realm late stage and true severing realm late stage and peak true severing realm cultivators acted in time, preventing everyone from being injured under this terrifying pressure. They quickly retreated a lot, almost forced to the corner of the ancient, desolate space, far away from Du Xiaofu. Although Yu Qingyin and others could still hold on, their situation was not very good. Thick beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads, and their hair was all wet. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Layers of strange light emitted from Du Xiaofu's body, spreading out in the void, enveloping the entire ancient, desolate space. A monstrous aura was rising, and waves of a different kind of power was emitted. It contained endless life aura and soul fluctuations, forming law patterns that could be seen with the naked eye. This, this is the sign of the law of the soul approaching perfection. Meng Dongyang suddenly cried out in panic. His eyes were wide open, filled with disbelief. He came from the refining God temple, and his cultivation was in the law of the soul. Moreover, he had already broken through to perfection. Once the opportunity arrived, he could begin to attempt to break through to the immortal realm. Therefore, at this time, the power of law on Du Xiaofu's body was seen through by him. It was the power of the law of the soul approaching perfection. In other words, Du Xiaofu had already reached the peak of the true severing realm late stage in the law of the soul. This was too terrifying. In a short 70 years, among the countless outstanding talents that had appeared in the 33 heavens since ancient times, just how many of them had been able to achieve this? The Divine Emperor. Really is abnormal. Everyone was shocked. Meng Dongyang's words made them feel like they were going crazy. Many people opened their mouths but couldn't say a word. After a long time, they thought that only the word abnormal was enough to describe Du Xiaofu's comprehension ability. Terrifying, really terrifying. Fatty Fan Yushu raised his trembling arm and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Even his lips were trembling. When he entered the origin space 100 years ago, Du Xiaofu was only slightly stronger than him. But now, the gap between the two was getting bigger and bigger, to the point where it was difficult to surmount. Fan Yushu asked himself, no matter how heaven-defying his luck was, it would be difficult for him to catch up to the purple-robed youth in this life. He Jibai, Yu Chengliang, Yu Chengyu, and the others had the same feeling. Especially for He Jixin, Duan Yizong, and Yu Chengxi, they had all stepped into the true severing realm around the same time as Du Xiaofu. But now, they were still at the peak of the early true severing realm. If they wanted to step into the middle true severing realm, they didn't know how many years it would take. But Du Xiaofu was already at the peak of the late true severing realm. But this wasn't the key. The key was that this guy cultivated the three primeval laws. In space, matter, and soul, he had reached the late true severing realm. How the hell did he want others to live? Compared to him, all of them were trash, complete and utter trash. We can't compare with him. It's too demoralizing. Yu Chengxi revealed a bitter smile, shook his head, and said, how is this cultivating? This is simply flying, okay? Yu Yuran stroked her smooth forehead and sighed. It's simply despairing. I can't see where my future hope lies. He Jibai's handsome face was squeezed together like a bitter gourd. We have to constantly remind ourselves that he is our divine emperor. He is so extraordinary. Duan Yizong thought for a while, and suddenly said this. After saying this, he nodded seriously and affirmed again, yes, that's it. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but laugh bitterly. This idea was indeed excellent. At the very least, it would make them feel much better when compared with Du Xiaofu. Buzz, buzz, buzz. On Du Xiaofu's body, the fluctuations continued to spread out. At the same time that the law of soul produced a rhythm, the law of space, the law of matter, and the law of time were naturally released and began to produce a strange rhythm together. At the same time, the frequency of this fluctuation was constantly changing, sometimes strong and sometimes weak, sometimes slow and sometimes fast. The Divine Emperor has actually mastered the law of time. After many experts captured the fluctuation, they couldn't help but raise their eyebrows and exclaim, What the fuck? It was unknown who cursed in a low voice, but they had nothing to say. Everyone ignored this curse and just looked motionlessly at the purple-robed youth sitting in the distance. Not long after, an even more shocking scene appeared again. The frequency of the vibration changed again and again in the light of the law of time, and finally, at a certain moment, it suddenly stagnated and stabilized. In the next moment, the figure lying on the ground beside Du Xiaofu also surged with a bright light. The two of them, one sitting and one lying, intertwined with the power of law and started to faintly resonate. In an instant, the power of law in the entire desolate ancient space transformed into a terrifying storm that wreaked havoc in all directions. Yu Chengyin and the others had nowhere to retreat. This storm of laws was very ferocious, and because they had to take care of the other 20,000 people, it was very strenuous for them to resist. However, they couldn't open the desolate ancient space. so they could only grit their teeth and bitterly hold on. Who is that sleeping person on the ground? He seems to be very powerful. Many people's backs were drenched in cold sweat as they looked at the Tianwu Academy principal lying on the ground and muttered. After they entered the desolate ancient space, they had already seen that figure sleeping. However, as this concerned the Divine Emperor's personal secret, no one asked about it. But now, after Du Xiaofu's law resonated with the power of that figure, it was actually brought to an extremely high level. A vast aura spread across the space, releasing a profound and obscure fluctuation. Even Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoren, and Tang Yuanshan, who were at the perfection stage of truth-severing, were unable to see through it. It was obvious that the strength of that sleeping person far surpassed them. At the very least, he was an immortal realm expert. The resonance of laws happened to him again? At the front of the crowd, Yu Chengyao's red lips moved slightly with shock. After she returned to the transcendent Changrong heaven from the outside world, she had heard many things about Du Xiaofu. Furthermore, the imperial ancestor, Martial Uncle Chu, and the others had told her that there was an unparalleled expert sleeping in Du Xiaofu's desolate ancient space. Moreover, he had a deep relationship with their Yu family. When he was in the Qian Su Jinghua heaven, Du Xiaofu had once coincidentally resonated with the sleeping person, and from then on, he had made great progress in the law of space. And now, the same situation as before seemed to be happening once again. This caused Yu Chengyao to be incomparably shocked. Chapter 2836. It wasn't just Yu Chengyao. As the other powerhouses looked at Du Xiaofu's state, they couldn't suppress the shock in their hearts. However, all of this was just the beginning. At the same time that Du Xiaofu's space, matter, and soul laws intertwined, an even more mysterious fluctuation rippled out once more. This fluctuation circulated silently, and no one could see it. However, it truly existed. Du Xiaofu's body was wrapped in it, as if he was placed in another era, isolated from the present world. He was in a completely different time and space from everyone else. Time. This is the time laws. Zhang Haoren almost jumped up as he wantonly screamed. His heart was filled with shock. This shock was no small matter. Time laws. The others were also shocked. Du Xiaofu's strongest laws had always been space and matter laws. Today, in the desolate ancient space, he had borrowed the power of that ominous object to break through the soul laws. That was one thing, but who would have thought that he would actually resonate with the time laws? Under everyone's perception, they could clearly feel that the sleeping figure lying on the ground, besides the space laws, also had fluctuations of the time laws. Du Xiaofu, on the other hand, was producing a terrifying rhythm. Your Majesty the Divine Emperor, this is defying the heavens. A powerhouse's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva as he spoke. In the 33 heavens, the vast majority of life forms, after reaching the truth-severing boundary, would only choose a single primal law to cultivate with all their might. Only this way could they be more focused. The principle of biting off more than one could chew was something everyone understood. Even if there were an extremely small number of powerhouses with outstanding talent who could cultivate two primal laws, such existences were absolutely rare. Among their peers, perhaps there wouldn't even be several hundred people in the 33 heavens. And among these several hundred people, how many would be able to successfully surpass the truth-severing boundary with two laws and reach the immortal realm? As for cultivating three primal laws at the same time, that was even more unimaginable. Not to mention, this fellow Du Xiaofu had actually cultivated all four primal laws at the same time. If this situation were to spread to the outside world, it would absolutely cause all cultivators to go crazy. What kind of heaven-defying feat was this? If the Divine Emperor can really surpass the immortal realm with all four primal laws, then I'm afraid he'll be able to rival the mid-level immortal realm at the first heavens. At the very least, he'll be able to reach the strength of the fourth heavens, or even higher. Meng Dongyang's entire body was Xin Yu Chengyao was, Meng Dongyang's words. The shock they had received today was simply too great. Every one of them had received an unimaginable shock. They were all in a state, They were all in shocks. They were unable to recover. Wang's. Wang's was boundary. Fuss? Not long after, the power of all the laws had shrunk quite a bit. They no longer danced wildly in the desolate ancient space, but gathered into a ball of law light. In this way, the desolate ancient space looked more like an independent world. Inside, the four primal laws were constantly evolving, fiercely colliding, and setting off all kinds of strange phenomena. Everything that could be seen and sensed in the greater thousand worlds was contained within it. As the power of the laws condensed, the pressure on Yu Chengyao, and the others all retreated. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The pressure they had just endured was too great. If it had continued, they definitely wouldn't have been able to resist until the end, evolving the laws and engraving the greater thousand worlds. Who in the world can do this? Yu Chengyin's handsome face was filled with indescribable shock as he muttered to himself. He could clearly feel the four primal laws appearing on Du Xiaofu's body. As they intertwined with each other, they evolved into various Dharma images. Although these Dharma images were still far from being real, it was enough to shock the world. He knew that when Du Xiaofu broke through to the immortal realm, everything would be closer to being real. The soul law has broken through, but the time law still needs to break through. Looks like we have to wait a little longer. Tung Yuanshan tried his best to suppress the emotions in his heart as he spoke in a natural tone. No matter. If the Divine Emperor can have such a terrifying improvement, it's worth it even if we have to wait 1,000 years. That's right. His Majesty's attainments in the four primal laws are deeper. We have more confidence in competing in the Fiend God battlefield. When we go out with the Divine Emperor again, I'm afraid that even if the disciples of the Holy Lands and Divine Kingdoms join forces, they won't be a match for him. Unless someone can be one step ahead and step into the immortal realm first. Only then can they join forces and fight the Divine Emperor. But the possibility of this is close to zero. Even if you search the entire 33 heavens, you won't be able to find a second person like the Divine Emperor, let alone the Supreme Chang Rong Heaven. Many people opened their mouths to speak, and their faces were extremely stiff. They were willing to wait. Du Xiaofu's improvement was a good thing for everyone. The stronger he was, the more benefits the Yuqing Divine Kingdom would be able to obtain in the celestial devil battlefield under his leadership. Let's continue cultivating. Yu Chengyao looked in Du Xiaofu's direction once more before turning around. She found a place to sit down and entered a state of cultivation. Seeing this, the others followed suit. No one knew how long it would take for Du Xiaofu to awaken. While waiting, they couldn't afford to waste any time. No matter what, they had to improve themselves. Only then would they be able to catch up to the Divine Emperor and not fall too far behind. Time flew by like a white steed, silently passing by. Du Xiaofu's condition persisted for a very long time. He continued to comprehend and follow the rhythm produced by the resonance of the laws to comprehend the profound and vast principles. The power of time and space that the principle of Tianwu Academy possessed was simply too overwhelming. To Du Xiaofu, it was undeniably several times stronger than before. He had already reached the meditative realm and was currently breaking through to the third level of the meditative realm, looking through reincarnation. He had already completed the fusion of the laws of time and space in the immortal realm and grasped the source of the two primordial laws. The principle of Tianwu Academy was already walking on a deeper path and had come into contact with a deeper level of the Great Tao. What he pursued was the source of the Great Tao. If the four sources of laws were the most fundamental existences in the world, they were the foundation of everything. Then the source of the Great Tao was the source of the laws. Only by grasping the source of the Great Tao could one become the strongest living being in the world. However, it was clear that this path was extremely difficult. The principle of Tianwu Academy had been in a deep slumber in the divine martial world for countless years. Even now, he was still trapped in the third level of the meditative realm. His awakening was still far in the future. And this also made one realize why there were so few forgotten powerhouses in the 33 heavens that had appeared in the world. The principle of Tianwu Academy was still very far away from the source of the Great Tao. Right now, He had only come into contact with a deeper level of the great Tao. Of course, to Du Xiaofu, this level was already unfathomable. He didn't even have the qualifications to come into contact with it. The layers of the source of the laws of time and space were trembling. Borrowing this mighty force, Du Xiaofu continuously dissected the formless traces of the laws of time and space. Those strange traces were slowly being sorted out by him. Close to 110 years passed by in the blink of an eye. Finally, at this moment, the ripples of the laws of time and space on Du Xiaofu's body had risen to an extremely terrifying level. The independent world around him became more and more solid, exuding a terrifying aura. As a result, the entire desolate ancient space trembled violently. Layers of boundless ocean-like energy constantly battered this space, as if a terrifying world was suppressing it. However, the desolate ancient space was something that the principal of Tianwu Academy had refined. Although the tremors produced by Du Xiaofu's body were terrifying, it wasn't enough to truly shake this space. However, Yu Qingyin, Teng Yuanshan, Zhang Haoran, Meng Dongyang, Yu Yuran, and the others were different. They were immediately jolted awake. Everyone looked in Du Xiaofu's direction in disbelief. They unleashed all of their strength without holding back to maintain their balance and protect the other experts at the same time. The power of the laws of time on the divine emperor's body has also risen to the peak. At the front of the crowd, Zhang Haoran stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He felt that his lips were slightly chapped. The four primordial laws have all reached the peak of the late true severing stage, Yu Yuran said softly, her beautiful face filled with shock. Just as they were looking at Du Xiaofu, who was wrapped in a ball of energy that felt like a real world, opened his eyes with a swoosh. He was sitting there cross-legged, but he looked as if he was isolated from the world and possessed a different kind of charm. Since I've already reached this step, I might as well not suppress it anymore. Let's all reach true severing perfection. Du Xiaofu muttered to himself as he felt the increase in his strength. After he finished speaking, he looked at the people in the corner of the desolate ancient space. Everyone, leave the desolate ancient space. Du Xiaofu let out a soft shout. Then, with a thought, he opened up the desolate ancient space, and a gap appeared. The divine emperor will definitely cause an even bigger commotion. We might be in danger if we stay here. Let's leave together. Let's go. Under the lead of the three true severing perfection and true severing perfection stage experts, the 20,000 people quickly flashed out of the space and disappeared through the gap. Du Xiaofu looked at this scene and sealed the space again. Then, he closed his eyes again. For great primitive laws, break for me. His voice was deep, and he suddenly shouted. Immediately, waves of energy, like a flood that had been opened, were no longer suppressed and brazenly charged into the void. Rumble. In the desolate ancient space, there was a vast sound like a thunderclap. In addition, all kinds of strange scenes were also evolving, being destroyed again and reborn again and again. When he was cultivating in the Yamada-headed serpent clan of Qian Su Jinghua Heaven, Du Xiaofu could have directly broken into the true severing perfection stage in the material laws. However, at that time, he was forcibly suppressed. Because his ambition was very big, he wanted to make a breakthrough in the four great primitive laws at the same time. And now, this opportunity was ripe. In the material laws, he only needed to release all of his power, and he could naturally break through. In the soul laws, after using that ominous item to cultivate, he had already reached a level that was only a step away from the true severing perfection stage. He could easily break through. In addition, as he resonated with the power of laws on the Tianwu Academy's body, the time laws were also approaching perfection. As for the space laws, he had already comprehended them completely. Chi. Following Du Xiaofu's continuous attacks, the light of laws shone brightly, resplendent, dark, profound, obscure, and all kinds of other charms rose endlessly. These charms each represented a type of power of laws, and they were the derivative forms of the four great primitive laws. Finally, at a certain moment, all the power of laws reached the peak, and they could no longer be broken through. The true severing perfection stage had been broken through by Du Xiaofu. I might as well try to break through to the immortal level in one go. Du Xiaofu felt the changes in the power in his body. While he was happy, he also felt a surge of desire. Breaking through from the true severing perfection stage to the immortal level was a huge threshold. Who knew how many geniuses and heroes had been stopped by it? It could be said that the number of true severing cultivators in a large world could be innumerable. However, when it came to the immortal level, Du Xiaofu knew from his experience in the Qin, Su Jinghua heaven that there were only a few 100,000 immortal level experts in a large world. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was to break through to the immortal level. That profound threshold was like a heavenly chasm. However, Du Xiaofu still wanted to give it a try. The temptation of a whole new world was simply too great. Only by reaching the immortal level could one become the strongest person in the 33 heavens. Of course, this was under the condition that the meditative forgetfulness stage did not appear. Du Xiaofu acted as soon as he thought of it. The four great primitive laws surged, releasing a vast aura. That terrifying power danced in the air, setting off a world-destroying storm in the desolate ancient space. It swept in all directions, and it could instantly destroy everything. However, it was fortunate that this place was refined by a meditative forgetfulness stage expert. Although Du Xiaofu's power was too terrifying, it could not cause much damage to the desolate ancient space. As for the dean himself, there was no need to talk about him. Although he was in a deep slumber, there was still a formless energy protecting his body at all times, preventing any tyrannical power from getting close to him. This won't do. There's no sign of me breaking through at all. Du Xiaofu had worked hard for a long time, but it was to no avail. He could not even touch the threshold of the immortal level, let alone break through. After thinking for a while, he decided to retract his power and sank into deep thought. True severing, true severing, true severing, severing the cage, and reconstructing one's true self. In this realm, living beings need to get rid of all obstacles and seek the power of the four great primitive laws. At the very least, they need to grasp all the derived forms of one of the four great primitive laws to reach perfection. As he pondered, he muttered, "As for the immortal level, one needs to fuse all the power of laws together and return to the origin of the laws. For example, the law of matter contains the laws of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, and so on. Only by fusing them step by step can one grasp the true origin of the law of matter." He had already learned about the cultivation of these realms from Yu Yuqian, Yu Taiyin, Chu Daoju, and Elder Kong. If one wanted to break through the threshold of severing truth to the immortal level, they needed to fuse a part of the power of laws together. Only then could they enter the first sky of immortal. However, now that I've grasped all the four great primitive laws, if I try to break through at the same time, I can't help but feel that the power of the different laws will affect each other. I can't smoothly touch that threshold. However, if I try to break through the four great primitive laws separately, it will be impossible. Du Xiaofu frowned and kept thinking about the problem of breaking through the threshold of the immortal level. The reason why there were so few people in the 33 heavens who tried to break through to the immortal level with two or more primitive laws was because it was simply too difficult. When breaking through, the power of laws would twist and entangle with each other, which made the process of breaking through extremely difficult. If the gate to the immortal realm was only so wide, one primitive power of law could pass through it. Then, when two kinds of power of law were put together, it would be impossible to squeeze them in. It would be hard for the warrior to find a way to get through it, which would put him in a dilemma. If I break through the four great primitive laws separately, then everything I've done in the severing truth realm will be meaningless. I'll lose my original intention. Du Xiaofu couldn't help but sigh. His eyes were filled with helplessness. Chu Daoju, Ling Feng, Long San, and Yu Taiyin had once told him that the immortal level fused with the laws and pursued the power of the origin of the laws. During this process, once one reached the first sky of immortal with one primitive law, the body and primordial spirit of the living being would have a deep affinity with that law. As for the other primitive laws, they would be repelled, and it would be very difficult to fuse with them. Therefore, Du Xiaofu couldn't give up on the other 3 primitive laws and focus on breaking through one primitive law. In the 33 heavens, it wasn't that no one had broken through to the immortal level with 2 primitive laws. However, they had all done it at the same time, just like the dean of the Sky Martial School beside him. What he needed to do at this time was to mix the various primordial laws together and make the various powers more condensed. How can I fuse the 4 great primitive laws together and twist them into a rope to break through to the immortal level? Du Xiaofu was still pondering. This question made him feel very conflicted. After all, there were too few people who could do this. Although it wasn't impossible to say that there would be no one who could cultivate the 4 great primitive laws at the same time, it was definitely in existence as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. In the current world, other than Du Xiaofu, there was probably no one who could do it. This emperor is so worried. Du Xiaofu's face suddenly turned bitter. He felt helpless. There were very few predecessors who could set him as a benchmark. This made his path to breaking through dark. He could only rely on himself to explore. Chapter 28:37. Du Xiaofu felt a little dejected. It was too difficult to reach the immortal realm. Countless people who cultivated only one type of primordial law found it difficult to reach the immortal realm, let alone someone who cultivated all 4 types of primordial laws. At this moment, he only felt that his future was boundless and he had no direction at all. At this moment, he actually had the urge to shake the dean awake and ask him how he managed to break through to the immortal realm using the 2 primordial laws of time and space. That way, he would be able to use it as a reference. However, it was obvious that this idea was not realistic at all. He did not understand what the meditative realm was like. If he disturbed the dean's breakthrough, it would not be a good thing. Not to mention whether it would affect the dean's cultivation. If he woke up, he would probably be able to slap Du Xiaofu into a pancake. If the dean wanted to kill him in the meditative realm, wouldn't it be as easy as killing an ant? Therefore, Du Xiaofu could only shake his head and give up. Looks like I can only rely on myself to figure it out slowly. He stopped thinking about it, stood up from the ground, and walked out of the ancient, desolate space. He could not rush to break through to the immortal realm. Swoosh! Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in the outside world. He came to the ancient forest that was razed to the ground by the ferocious creature. Emperor God, Your Majesty! Seeing him appear, the 20,000 strong people of Yuqing rushed forward and surrounded Du Xiaofu. This breakthrough actually took me nearly 2 years. Du Xiaofu counted the days and discovered that from the time they obtained the Black Blood Evil Zoisha until now, almost 2 years had passed in the outside world, and in the desolate ancient space, it was almost 200 years from start to finish. However, he had also gained a lot, especially in the time and soul laws. He had finally improved greatly. All 4 types of primordial laws had reached the full circle of truth-severing stage. If such a terrifying development were to be announced throughout the 33 heavens, it was unknown just how many people would be frightened to death. The Divine Emperor's aura has become even more profound. Now, he wouldn't even be afraid of the top 100 Changrong sky cultivators, let alone the top 100 of the Yuqing divine nation. Meng Dongyang sighed bitterly and said with some helplessness, the 4 primal laws had all reached the great circle of truth-severing. This kind of terrifying realm was enough to crush the combined attacks of many of his peers. Their deity emperors had already left their peers in the dust by a terrifying distance. The others listened to Meng Dongyang's words and just nodded silently in agreement. I wonder how the major forces in the Fiend God battlefield are doing. We've been delayed for so long. We've missed a lot of opportunities. Du Xiaofu didn't care about the gazes of the crowd as he sighed with emotion. Since His Majesty has come out of seclusion, let's continue our exploration. A late-stage truth-severing expert said as he looked at Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu gladly agreed. Then, he led everyone and continued forward. At this time, they were in an area that looked like a plain. This was caused by the ferocious creature from before. The ferocious aura was much thinner than elsewhere. As they continued on their journey, Du Xiaofu put all the cultivators below the late stage of truth, severing back into the desolate ancient space again. Then, he began to travel through the void with Yu Qingyin and a dozen others. As they traveled through the ancient withered forest, they realized that there were many traces of people exploring this place. I think the disciples of the other major forces must have discovered this place and come in to search for it, Yu Chengyao said as she looked at the surroundings. 2 years was enough time for many things to happen. It wasn't surprising that more experts had discovered this place. Since that's the case, there's no need for us to look for any more benefits here. Let's continue to the desolate ancient ruins. Zhang Haoran nodded and then looked at Du Xiaofu. Even if there were other benefits in this forest, they must have been plundered by the disciples of the other major forces. There was no need for the Yuqing divine nation to waste any more time here. Let's go. Du Xiaofu waved his hand and led the group in the direction they had set. Along the way, their speed was extremely fast and there wasn't much delay. According to the memories of the demon clan member, the desolate ancient ruins were very far away from them. With the strength of an ordinary truth-severing cultivator, they would need to fly for at least a few years to reach it. Therefore, the group moved with almost all their strength. However, during this period, Du Xiaofu and the others would often appear from the void passageway and obtain some treasures and such. They had a good harvest. The deeper they went into the fiend god battlefield, the thicker the bloody and ferocious aura. The things that were born were also more extraordinary. However, they didn't find any treasures on the level of the black blood Ganoderma and the blood jade spirit ginseng. However, they had a great harvest of things like the black soulwood and the underworld soulgrass. They actually obtained 30 stalks. Things on the level of the crimson nether flower were even more numerous. Such a harvest was absolutely beyond the imagination of many young experts. It was enough for many people to share. On this day, Du Xiaofu and the others were flying and hurrying when they encountered a very large group of people. There were hundreds of thousands of people, disciples of the Holy Land. The moment he saw this group, Du Xiaofu concluded that they were definitely from a Holy Land. Large numbers of disciples from those extremely powerful Holy Lands had entered this place. He had already seen them before the Fiend God battlefield opened. Just as he was speaking, the other party had also discovered them and was flying towards them. Many young faces appeared. There were 7 people in the lead, all of whom had the strength of truth-severing consummation. They were very terrifying. In fact, there was a young man in white robes who was even more unfathomable. Even Meng Dongyang, Zhang Haoran, and Tang Yuanshan, the 3 truth-severing consummation cultivators, couldn't see his true realm. They seemed to be from the Qingtsang Holy Land. Yu Chengyin's eyes flashed as he looked at the white-robed young man in the lead and said, when they gathered outside the Fiend God battlefield, he had paid attention to the situation of some Holy Lands and felt a sense of familiarity with this young man. The Qingtsang Holy Land could be ranked in the top 10 of the 35 Holy Lands in the entire transcendent Changrong heaven. It was definitely a colossus. Which Holy Kingdom's disciples are you all from? When he saw Du Xiaofu and the others, the white-robed young man stepped forward and asked softly. His gaze swept across Du Xiaofu and the others one by one, and there was deep shock in his eyes. The purple-robed young man and the others only had about 20,000 people, but there were 4 truth-severing consummation cultivators among them. This was especially so for the purple-robed young man. Even the white-robed young man felt as if he had fallen into an abyss when he looked at him. This feeling made him afraid. It was also because of this that he would greet the other party now. That's right. We are disciples of the Yuqing Holy Kingdom. May I ask if you are the saint of the Qingtsang Holy Land? Yu Chenyin looked at Du Xiaofu. After receiving his instructions, he cupped his fists and said to the white-robed young man opposite him, Yuqing Holy Kingdom. It's actually someone from the Yuqing Holy Kingdom. When the hundreds of thousands of people opposite them heard this, they were all stunned. The name of the Yuqing Holy Kingdom could be said to be like thunder to their ears. 2 years ago, they had caused quite a commotion. In the beginning, the people of the Tsangming Holy Kingdom were ruthlessly trampled on by the newly appointed Yuqing Divine Emperor. Later on, it was rumored that more than 20 experts of the Jade Feather Holy Ground had also suffered greatly at the hands of these people. Therefore, in an instant, the name of the Yuqing Holy Kingdom spread throughout the entire Divine Devil battlefield. Their young Divine Emperor, who was only at the truth-severing stage, also became famous. All the saints, saintesses, and princesses were deeply interested in him. So it's you from the Yuqing Holy Kingdom. I am Xiao Yun, from the Qingtsang Holy Land. The white-robed young man looked at Yu Qingyin and the others opposite him and replied very politely. His eyes finally landed on Du Xiaofu. It wasn't difficult for him to see that this young man in purple robes was undoubtedly the legendary Yuqing Divine Emperor. Before the destruction of the Extreme Spirit Holy Land, the Yuqing Holy Kingdom could only be ranked in the middle of the 72 Holy Kingdoms. But now, it seems that the strength of their generation is very terrifying. Xiao Yun thought in his heart. He didn't dare to believe it. The overall strength of the Yuqing Holy Kingdom made him look at them in a new light. This wasn't a lineup that a mid-tier Holy Kingdom should have. This one is Du Xiaofu. Greetings, Saint's son. Du Xiaofu finally spoke. Clearly, the other party didn't have much hostility, so he didn't put on airs. Greetings, Divine Emperor. Xiao Yun smiled and said to him, I didn't expect to see the Yuqing Divine Emperor here. It is indeed a surprise. It just so happens that a secret place called the Primordial Ruins has appeared. Right now, all the holy lands and holy kingdoms are rushing there. If the Divine Emperor is interested, why don't we travel together? He looked at Du Xiaofu and spoke calmly. His attitude was also somewhat sincere. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and was slightly surprised. He had learned about the existence of the primordial ruins from the memories of the demon race. He didn't expect that in just 2 years, it had already spread throughout the divine demon battlefield. Many people knew about it. This made him a little speechless. It seemed that many things had happened while he was in seclusion. He guessed that the other forces had also encountered the demon race. All right. After thinking for a moment, Du Xiaofu nodded his head and simply agreed. It just so happened that he was going there. It was also on the way to the Qingtsang Holy Ground. He could also find out some things and understand the current situation better. Then let's talk as we walk. Xiao Yun smiled warmly and gestured for him to go ahead. Du Xiaofu also stretched out his hand, and the two of them walked side by side. They led the majestic crowd of over 100,000 people and flew deeper into the divine demon battlefield. Du Xiaofu and Xiao Yun chatted as they traveled. Before long, they became much more familiar with each other and began to call each other brothers. Brother Xiao Yun, there's something I don't understand. Du Xiaofu glanced at Xiao Yun and asked, 2 years ago, I heard that many disciples from the 35 Holy Lands and the other 71 Holy Kingdoms wanted to cause trouble for me. But why do you want to travel with me? Aren't you afraid of being implicated? He was a little puzzled. He didn't know Xiao Yun, but he suddenly wanted to travel with the Yuqing Divine Kingdom. This puzzled him. Haha, Xiao Yun suddenly laughed heartily when he heard Du Xiaofu's words. He said in an extremely candid manner, reputation is something that is spread. Moreover, anyone with a discerning eye can tell that someone is intentionally spreading rumors about you, Brother Du, to make you the target of everyone. He glanced at Du Xiaofu and continued, however, this plot that can't be considered a plot is very successful. Even if many people see the truth, they still list you as their #1 enemy and want to fight you. They want to trample on your name and establish their own prestige. Brother Xiao Yun, you see it clearly. Du Xiaofu nodded and expressed his agreement with Xiao Yun's words. Actually, I'm no exception. My thoughts are exactly the same as theirs. I want to defeat you in battle. Xiao Yun smiled faintly. There was a hint of ridicule in his eyes, but it suddenly turned into deep helplessness as he said, however, when I first saw you, I realized that your cultivation is too terrifying. You're definitely much stronger than me. So, at that moment, I completely dispelled my previous thoughts. Du Xiaofu raised his eyes to look at Xiao Yun. He was very surprised. There was no need to think about it. This guy was also very terrifying. Otherwise, how could he have seen through his cultivation with a single glance? Although Xiao Yun's words were very modest, and he knew he wasn't Du Xiaofu's match, Du Xiaofu also knew that if Du Xiaofu excluded himself, Xiao Yun would be one of the strongest even amongst his peers in the 33 heavens. At the same time, Du Xiaofu had a good impression of this person. He was very frank and didn't hide anything. He said what he thought. At the very least, He seemed like a magnanimous gentleman at the moment. When a terrifying expert knows he's no match for you, he definitely can't be your enemy. How can it be better to be your friend? Xiao Yun didn't care about Du Xiaofu's gaze and continued to say, however, the disciples from the 35 Holy Lands are all arrogant people. I'm no exception. So, I hope to have a battle with you if I have the chance. I don't want to defeat you, but at the very least, I want to measure the extent of my strength. Brother Xiao Yun is too modest. We'll definitely have a chance to fight. I hope we can fight to our heart's content. Du Xiaofu revealed a helpless smile, but he agreed very straightforwardly. Haha, good. Xiao Yun laughed again and said, I'm not afraid of losing to you. The greatest benefit of being a friend is that at the very least, I won't be beaten up miserably like an enemy and be mocked by others. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu rubbed his nose, speechless. According to Xiao Yun, there were such benefits to being friends. He hadn't realized it before. This guy is definitely a terrifying master. Du Xiaofu looked at Xiao Yun again and thought to himself. Xiao Yun wanted to use him to see the extent of his strength. In fact, he was implying that it would be difficult for him to find an opponent in the same generation as him in the Changrong Divine Land. He wanted to fight with all his strength. However, Du Xiaofu thought to himself and chuckled. When the time comes, I'll definitely teach you a lesson. If you're not convinced, you can bring more helpers and come at me together. Hundreds of thousands of people traveled at an extremely fast speed. Their destination was the primordial ruins. Along the way, they encountered another group of people. There were about 30,000 of them, and they were also very strong. However, compared to the combined forces of the Qing Tsang Divine Kingdom and the Yu Qing Divine Kingdom, they were clearly lacking. Fatty Fan Yushu recognized the identity of these people. They were from a faction called the Changqing Divine Kingdom, ranked 7th or 8th among the 72 Divine Kingdoms. When the disciples of the Changqing Divine Kingdom saw Du Xiaofu's large group, they directly took a detour and didn't even dare to greet them. The difference between a sacred ground and a divine kingdom was too great. Few people dared to provoke them. Traveling with the people of the Qing Tsang Divine Kingdom actually has such benefits. Du Xiaofu rubbed his nose and thought to himself. With such a terrifying lineup like the Qing Tsang Divine Kingdom, it could save him a lot of trouble. Otherwise, if he encountered other factions along the way and they knew his identity, it would inevitably attract some trouble. Fortunately, these troubles were avoided because of the deterrence of the Qing Tsang Divine Kingdom. After rushing for so long, we should be arriving soon. Among the crowd, a true severing perfection stage expert from the Qing Tsang Divine Kingdom sighed as he looked around. Based on his feeling, they shouldn't be too far away from the primordial ruins. The divine demon battle realm is too vast. We've been gone for another 2 years. Some experts revealed bitter smiles. They were very helpless. True severing perfection stage experts rarely used spatial channels to travel such a long distance. It was indeed a waste of time for them to travel such a long distance. However, in these 2 years, they had gained a lot. There were many precious medicines here. Hundreds of thousands of people spread out like a large net. Who knew how many benefits they had obtained? At this point in time, almost everyone had obtained extraordinary opportunities and reaped bountiful rewards. Perhaps to the few experts like Du Xiaofu and Xiao Yun, these benefits weren't particularly great. However, in the eyes of others, it was something unimaginable in the past. Do you feel it? The fiendish aura here is much stronger. I'm afraid the primordial ruins aren't far away. Xiao Yun suddenly stopped flying and carefully sensed the aura in the void. I feel that my divine soul is throbbing more and more. It seems like I can't suppress it any longer. An early-stage true severing perfection stage expert frowned and said, at this time, a large number of seizing divinity stage experts had a deeper understanding of this. They circulated their cultivation with all their strength, but they slowly felt that their expressions were a little erratic. It should be soon. The air and soil here are completely different from other places. The difference is huge. Du Xiaofu looked at the ground from high up in the sky and said softly. Many people followed his gaze. The soil on the ground was also dark red, but it was no longer dry and hard. Instead, it was like a bloody mud. Patches of paste flowed, looking very terrifying.